Chapter 1167. The Ajati matriarch is the mother of all gods, born in the endless darkness, immortal. You are all the children of the Ajati matriarch. You are all brothers and sisters. You have suffered all kinds of pain, humiliation and suffering, death here, life there, death there, life here, reincarnation in the 6 realms. Where is your hometown? You can't return to your hometown. You can't enjoy peace and joy forever. We don't believe in those ghosts and gods. Our God is the Thunder Mother. The Thunder Mother will definitely defeat your God. A Thunder Barbarian youth shouted angrily. What does your Thunder Mother look like? What's her story? The Thunder Mother is the source of all things, the ancestor of all living beings. Life is born from destruction. The Earth Mother is the ancestor of all living beings. The Water Goddess is, all living beings are born from water. How do you know that the Thunder Mother is not the Ajati matriarch? How do you know that the Earth Mother and the Water Goddess are not the Ajati matriarch? There is only one world. There are so many gods. Then who created the world? Which God is real? The Ajati matriarch is an eternal existence. You can't see or hear with your eyes. She is an eternal existence, but she can't be seen, transcending time and space. You see the greenwood fangs, it's the Ajati matriarch. You see the kind face, it's also the Ajati matriarch. However you see her, she is how you see her. Do you think such an existence is limited to what we see? We are all the children of the Ajati matriarch. Because we see different things, we think they are different gods. The Ajati matriarch sent 3 gods, divided into 3 periods to rule the world. The God of the past always exists in the past, the God of the present always exists in the present, and the God of the future exists in the eternal future. Just say, Ajati matriarch, void hometown, and you have fate with the Ajati matriarch. You are fated with the Ajati matriarch, hence you have a mark. No matter how long you sink into the sea of bitterness, you are still you. As long as the mark is still there, one day you will be brought back to the void hometown by the Ajati matriarch. In the void hometown, there is no distinction between men and women. There is no distinction between the top and the bottom. If there is a man and a woman, then there is a difference between a man and a woman. If there is a difference between a man and a woman, then there is a difference between a man and a woman. We have the same identity. We are the children of the Ajati matriarch. Every day, in a house, a few people from the righteous sect and Xingrua would take turns to give lessons to the captured young people of the foreign tribes. They talked about God, pain, life, and all living beings. Children who received it well would be able to eat better food and live in better homes. Children who did not accept it well would be punished. Even in modern times, many people believed in these theories, not to mention these alien youngsters who had been captured and imprisoned and suffered so much. Besides, there were also food and other rewards. Under the constant brainwashing and various related hints in daily life, a fanatical atmosphere was created. In just half a month, half of the children were chanting, Ajati matriarch, void hometown. As for whether or not they truly believed in it like they did on the surface, that was not important. What was important was that they were a group. Every day, the people around them believed in the Ajati matriarch, and they were all fanatical believers. After a long time, as the saying goes, a lie told 10,000 times is the truth. And before they were sent back, there would be another selection. With the lie detector, it would not be easy for these children to deceive them. Xingrua once again left that place. There was no expression on his face, but his eyes were filled with pain and confusion. In order to protect his disciples, he took the initiative to bear the responsibility that he and his disciples should bear, so that they would not sink into that fanatical atmosphere. Even he had been greatly affected these days, let alone those disciples. As he walked, he chanted softly, Avalokitesvara Bodhisattva. When he was deep in the Prajna Paramitha, he saw that the 5 aggregates were empty, and he passed through all sufferings. Saraira, form is not different from emptiness, and emptiness is not different from form. Form is emptiness, emptiness is form. Perception, action, and consciousness are also the same. Big monk, big monk. The crisp voice of a young girl woke Xingrua up. When he looked up, he realized that he had arrived at the door of the house of Shanhuai. A young girl in a blue dress, who looked to be about 13 or 14 years old, was sitting behind the table with one leg propped up on the chair, waving at him. Ba, so it's your highness. Xing Ruo chuckled and walked in. A few youths from the Aboriginals turned their heads to look at him before turning back again. Big monk, do you want a drink today? It's my treat. Erhua happily called out to Xing Ruo. The money today belongs to the princess, right? Xing Ruo smiled. Every time he saw this princess, he would be in a good mood. Although monks didn't care about many things, he had a good impression of this straightforward and unpretentious young girl. Every time he chatted with her, he would be in a good mood. Otherwise, he would have had a hard time these days. Erhua rolled his eyes and smiled. Then I'll treat you with my money. Xing Ruo burst out laughing. Your Highness, use your own money to treat us as well, the Aboriginal youth beside him shouted. Erhua grabbed his money pouch, flipped it open, and said in distress, Then you can't drink as much as you want. 1 cup is enough. After this, your Highness can use my cousin's money to treat us to more drinks. The youth laughed. Erhua wrinkled his nose. Xiong Yen doesn't have much money. Everyone burst out laughing again. These people were the children of high-ranking officials, and Erhua had robbed many of their younger siblings' pocket money. However, although they looked like they were being bullied, Erhua was very loyal when they were in trouble. In addition, they often drank together at Shanhui House, so they didn't mind at all. I'll pay for each jar of wine on the table. Give me a side dish and a plate of braised beef, Erhua shouted. Immediately, the surrounding people cheered, Thank you, Your Highness. Big monk, tell me a story, Erhua said. I don't want to listen to stories about cutting meat to feed the eagles. I want to listen to Monkey Son. I like that monkey. Although she had heard stories about Monkey Son on Earth, she liked listening to Xing Ruo. Xing Ruo would always comment on something, and she found it very interesting. The princess has the personality of the great sage, so of course she likes him. However, in exchange, how about you sing a song? Xing Ruo asked with a smile. But Erhua immediately agreed. Xing Ruo continued talking until the lanterns were lit. Shanhui House was filled with people, and not long after, it was full. Let's call it a day. I've talked so much that my mouth is dry. Xing Ruo changed the topic. Erhua didn't have enough. He looked around and saw that everyone was listening to his story. He immediately said, If you tell a story, the boss will be happy. You're very welcome. A big man outside the crowd laughed and asked someone to bring a jar of wine. This is for your Highness and the monk. Thank you, Erhua said happily. Since we've drunk the wine, it's time for your Highness to sing. This is the boss's. If you want to listen, you have to buy me a drink. Erhua said with a smile. Since your Highness wants to sing, I'll sing for everyone here today. Suddenly, a woman's voice was heard. Ah, Sister Qing Lian. Erhua stood on a chair and greeted her with a smile. A moment later, people outside the Shanhui house could hear hands tapping on the table, and a young girl's clear voice could be heard. Looking down at the blue dragon moving, looking down at the lonely mountain, looking down at the world's peace song, I bend my body to the sky. Holding the white jade brush, please write about my true nature. I have a jar of old wine for you. P.S. Yi Xiaoyan's song of inviting wine to appear. It was a song that he liked. It was very grand. Chapter 1168. Send these 7 children to the border between the 2 worlds. You will also be responsible for the rest. First, establish a foothold, and then expand into the surrounding areas. What you have to do is to investigate the customs and appearance of the foreign races, especially the movements of the experts and when they will attack us. This is the most important thing. Secondly, expand as much as possible under the premise of self-preservation. In addition, don't forget to do your daily homework along the way. We don't have enough time here. However, we still need to spend half a year on the road. Make sure they are completely brainwashed and don't have the slightest inclination to escape. If they have that inclination, kill them immediately. Compared to the foreign races, we are too weak. Any small disturbance will cause us to suffer heavy losses. If the foreign races attack us with all their might, we can only face destruction. Remember, you can't afford to take the risk, let alone the human race, Rinpoche said as he sat in the seat of honor. Don't worry, Your Highness. I will go with you this time. Lin Dong cupped his hands. Thank you, Rinpoche said in a deep voice. In addition, you can command remotely. If you can find a suitable disguise, you might as well explore the territory of the foreign races. Rinpoche looked solemn. This matter was of great importance. Time was too short. The human race had too little time to develop and prepare. If the foreign races attacked with all their might now, he would have no choice but to escape with the Empress and heir Hua. Until they developed their own spaceship technology, the human race would be able to attack and defend. As for the rest, it would depend on whether the experts of the human race could withstand the experts of the foreign races. As long as they could contend with the upper ranks of the foreign races, it would be easier to deal with the middle and lower ranks. No matter how many ordinary troops there were, it was just a matter of one nuclear bomb. If one wasn't enough, then another would be used. This time, Lin Dong personally led a few experts of the righteous sect and 7 completely brainwashed foreign race teenagers to the Lansong territory to develop a group of disciples among the foreign races. In addition to setting up spies, he also wanted to find an opportunity to slow down the foreign races. The next day, Rinpoche brought Lin Dong and the others to the airport outside the capital. What's this? Lin Dong looked at the plane in front of him. It looks different from those tractors and trucks. It's much bigger and looks like a bird. Take this plane, Rinpoche said with a smile. If we take this now, we can reach Clear Valley. It's 3,000 miles deeper than Tsuxia City. We can save half a year. Fly over? No wonder Your Highness said that the journey would take half a year. I originally thought that it would take at least a year. Lin Dong circled the plane a few times and said with interest. There's nothing you can do if you're airsick, but don't be rash. We're in the sky, Rinpoche reminded as he suddenly recalled something. Over the past 2 years, there had been more than one case where some idiot got airsick and smashed a hole in the fuselage to get some air. One of them directly caused the plane to crash into one of the 60,000 mountains. Only a few people managed to escape from the crash. However, the reason why the plane had failed to land was probably because those people had escaped. Before the plane had even landed, it had been hit by the people who were running for their lives. The plane had almost fallen apart. That's right, all planes were equipped with landing hills. If they encountered any problems, they could just parachute and escape. However, some people escaped too quickly, they tore the plane apart and escaped. Fortunately, planes were mainly used to transport cargo, so there weren't many casualties. Unfortunately, all the cargo on that plane was buried in the sea of fire. Lin Dong happily boarded the plane with anticipation. The noise of the plane taking off finally made him understand where the loud noise he occasionally heard in the capital these days came from. One shouldn't expect Daeyo's planes to be very comfortable. With the loud noise and extreme flight experience, taking a plane wasn't as relaxing as riding a roller coaster. As soon as the plane took off, the 7 foreign youths and a few experts from the righteous sect looked at the ground outside the window, which was getting smaller and smaller. They didn't expect Daeyo to have reached this stage. Zhao Prince Consort is amazing. Lin Dong looked out of the window and smacked his lips. To be able to make the Empress fall in love with him, he naturally has something extraordinary about him, someone beside him said with a smile. That's right. Many people thought that it was incredible. If those people were here now, they would probably find it even more incredible, Lin Dong said with a smile. When the Empress set the engagement, it shocked many people. Before that, they were all curious about what kind of person could make the Empress fall in love with him. In the end, it was a little guy who hadn't even reached the man-will level. Looking back now, everyone's thoughts at that time were indeed quite funny. However, very soon, no one paid attention to Lin Dong's sigh. Their faces were pale, and their hands were tightly gripping the handles to resist the violent turbulence of the plane's ascent. Let me tell you, all of you, sit down obediently. We are in the sky. Lin Dong repeated what Rinpoche had just said to everyone. I know. Even if we die, we will die here. Su Jiaojiao, who was holding Lin Dong's left and right hands, was pale. Stop talking about dying. It's still too early to die. I still want to see what the god of the foreign races looks like. The god is immortal, yet he calls himself a god. How arrogant. Lin Dong curled his lips. No, I want to vomit. A foreign youth suddenly shouted. Alright, I swallowed it. At this moment, everyone was holding the bags in front of them and vomiting. The plane was filled with a pungent sour smell. Oh, I want to open the windows to get some fresh air. Lin Dong couldn't help but sigh. One day later, everyone arrived at Incheon City and had to rest here before heading to Aching Valley. As soon as the plane landed, everyone rushed out of the plane with weak footsteps. After a day of turbulence, especially during the ascent and descent, everyone felt that they would die if they sat any longer. The ground crew immediately carried buckets to wash up. Hey Wootson, why did you vomit too? Sue, who also vomited? Don't mention it. There was a guy on the plane who vomited and then swallowed it back. The two flight crew members looked ashen-faced. Now that you mention it, I want to vomit too. The ground crew members' faces immediately changed. This scene and smell were too strong. On this plane, the only people who weren't affected were Lin Dong and the two pilots. After Lin Dong got off the plane, he calmly looked at the mountain city that was built around the mountain in the distance. At this time, Rinpochen had returned to Earth. The spacecraft that returned from the Horned Dragon Galaxy had returned. In addition to bringing back a large number of animal and plant mineral samples from the Horned Dragon Galaxy, it also brought back some specific parameters of the two galaxies. For example, the time difference between the two worlds that Rinpochen had always been concerned about. Chapter 1169. I heard that the Easterners used to be rather thin and weak, but now they have all become strong and healthy. Look at the leader. He looks fierce and strong, but I think I'm fiercer. Well, what do you think? A white man was running on the field. When he saw the people in front of him, he flexed his arms to bulge his muscles. Shut your beak, Johnny, if you don't want to die. The big guy beside him suddenly changed his expression and stopped him. Why are you so timid? All right, I admit that those Easterners are indeed quite good at fighting. However, this is the International Space Center. Although we are in their territory, they won't do anything to you. You are too timid. The big guy called Johnny spread his hands and was very dissatisfied with his companion's cautiousness. Besides, I also said that he's very strong, but I think I'm stronger. Damn it. I'll say it again. Shut your beak, and others won't do anything to you. That person is different. Was about to go crazy. It wasn't a big deal to be arrogant, but shouldn't he have some foresight? Do you know him? Nonsense, I really wonder if your brain is full of doggage *T. Will said angrily. He then lowered his voice and said, Gotham City, the disaster that happened more than a decade ago. Johnny thought for a while and then came to a realization. The devil from the east? When I was watching that video, I kept paying attention to that chick in red. She's really charming. Fuck. Will cursed. He finally understood what it meant to be afraid of a pig-like teammate instead of a godlike opponent. Is that so? I also think that she's very charming. A magnetic man's voice came from the side. Will turned his head and saw a bald man with no eyebrows and no hair. Under the sunlight, the man's bald head reflected light like metal. You have good taste. Rinpochen smiled very kindly. You are really enviable, lucky brother. Johnny was stunned when he saw Rinpochen. He didn't expect Rinpochen to hear him from so far away. He then praised him. His words were full of envy. The other party's reaction and words were somewhat unexpected. Rinpochen was prepared to stuff him into the ground so that he wouldn't have to look at women for the rest of his life. However, he changed his mind. Although that's the truth, don't talk about someone else's wife behind their back, especially when the other party can casually plant you like a sunflower, Rinpochen said lightly and drifted away. It wasn't until Rinpochen and the others were far away that Will felt as if he had been granted amnesty. His clothes were drenched in sweat. He yelled at Johnny, You bastard, stay away from me in the future. Rinpochen didn't come here only for the return of the spacecraft. Although this matter was very important to everyone on Earth. However, Rinpochen already knew what he wanted to know. The time difference between the Horned Dragon Galaxy and Earth was 7 to 9. This meant that 7 hours in the Horned Dragon Galaxy would be 9 hours on Earth. The time difference between Dayo and Earth was far from that huge. As for passing through the nodes of the curve, it did not take much time. At most, it would take no more than 3 days. This number made many people excited. As for the specimens brought back by the spaceship, he was only interested in the research results. He only wanted to know what the specimens could bring, not what they were. Half a day later, Rinpoche looked at the equipment that was half the size of a room, frowned and asked, "Can this thing be smaller?" "Maybe in the future, but it can't be done now. This thing requires a large amount of positive and negative charges to be injected into an area in a short period of time to achieve a certain potential difference between the upper and lower layers of the cumulonimbus cloud. This is the so-called thunderstorm." A bespectacled middle-aged man shrugged. Rinpoche pondered for a moment and looked at the image displayed on the screen beside him. 3 tornadoes that looked like earth dragons connected the sky and the earth, sweeping everything between heaven and earth. He couldn't help but be tempted. What if there are no cumulonimbus clouds? Can it be artificially created? Can it be used on the ground? In theory, it can be done, but it requires more energy, more power, and more accurate charge injection. It will take at least a few years to conduct various tests. If the progress is slow, I'm afraid it will take more than 10 years. How long can the created tornadoes last? Probably from 10 minutes to 30 to 40 minutes, depending on the specific environment and weather conditions. Rinpoche thought about it and was still tempted. "Someone will talk to you later." Rinpoche was quite optimistic about this weather weapon. Even if it couldn't do anything to the experts of the foreign races, it could sweep through the rear of the foreign races, whether it was the grain transport team, the fertile soil for planting, or even the granary. With the speed of the tornadoes, they could sweep through an area in 30 to 40 minutes. Moreover, the other party wouldn't have thought that the power of heaven and earth was actually artificially created. "Where's Professor Arvid?" Rinpoche turned around and looked for him. "I want to see your system." A moment later, Rinpoche, led by another team, saw 3 sets of equipment being assembled on the spacecraft. To be precise, there were 3 sets of laser cannons. More than a decade ago, Rinpoche had seen this thing in the United States and its power. After more than a decade of development, the application of nuclear energy on Earth had become more mature and had shrunk a lot. The same was true for the laser cannons. This time, they were installed on the spacecraft and didn't need to be launched from the ground to the satellite and then bounced back. The caliber was also much larger at 15 centimeters. Previously, due to the problem of the reflection angle, the duration of each attack was extremely short. Now, it could last up to 3 seconds and continuously output a laser beam. With this size and performance, Rinpoche could reluctantly accept it. However, in his opinion, it would be best if they could shrink to a size of 1 meter while maintaining their power. That way, there would be hope for them to become individual weapons. These 2 sets of equipment were installed on the spacecraft. This time, the spacecraft was heading to the Triangulum Galaxy again for an extremely important mission, which was to try to contact and communicate with the Thunder Barbarians. These 2 sets of equipment were the fists that Earth had displayed in this aspect. If the communication didn't go well, depending on the situation, they would decide whether to use force to deter them. Rinpoche was happy to see this happen. He wanted to see how these weapons would perform in actual combat. If the 2 sides could really communicate, it would be a good thing. Rinpoche would be able to find out some information about the foreign races and might even be able to learn some clues about the Thunder Barbarians on Zishao planet. For example, why were they there? Rinpoche even had the idea of going there personally to observe. In any case, he spent most of his time in Dayo, and the duration of space travel wasn't too much of a problem for him. However, after thinking about the risks, Rinpoche dispelled this idea. No one knew if their shuttle would be affected when they were near the curve nodes. This was the universe, and communication between 2 places couldn't even be done now. If there was even the slightest impact while he was shuttling, it might cause the most tragic consequences. It was better to stay on Earth. Chapter 1170. Are you going to make a move tonight? Renbachin heard the news as soon as he returned to Dayo. The caravan has already left and will come again in at least a year. This is the time to make a move. These foreign tribes can't be allowed to stay any longer, the Empress replied from the other end of the radio station. Renbachin was silent for a while before saying, "Be careful." He couldn't tell what was in the Empress's laughter, but he felt that it was more of a sneer. The Empress's next words confirmed his suspicions. "You asked me to bite you when I return. I remember that." Renbachin thought for a while before recalling what he had said a few days ago. "Come back and bite me if you dare." He laughed dryly and said, "I was just joking. You don't have to be so serious, right?" The Empress smiled coldly and said, "An emperor doesn't joke. You are the regent, so you naturally have to keep your words." Renbachin was a little embarrassed and asked, "Can I bite your D***CK?" The Empress's face turned green and immediately hung up. Ignoring the strange expressions of the people around her, she looked at the tribe in the distance, which was still lit up, and coldly ordered, "Do it." "Ha ha." Before anyone could make any other expressions, one of the tall and sturdy ancient race men laughed out loud. Following his laughter, dozens of people rushed into the darkness with bloodthirsty laughter. "This bunch of lunatics. Bloodthirsty maniacs." Fire Snake Tao Qian laughed. These days, he already knew what the savages of the Aboriginals were like. They were the type that would itch if they didn't stir up trouble for a day. The Aboriginals in Lan City were only slightly more barbaric than the Great Xia people, but at least they could maintain a certain level of order and communicate. The best way to deal with these guys who popped out of nowhere was with their fists. If people were divided into lawful good, lawful neutral, chaotic neutral, and lawful evil, chaotic evil, etc., Tao Qian believed that he was lawful neutral, while these lunatics were the typical chaotic evil. Pure Metal Child tilted his head slightly, indicating that the biggest lunatic was behind him. "Do it." Su Gongso, who was using the sun and moon in the palm, shouted. More than half of the remaining experts disappeared into the darkness. The remaining experts who hadn't even condensed their heaven-grade weapons stayed on the periphery, ready to stop the foreign tribes that ran out. The roar of a beast could be heard from afar. Even from afar, one could feel the ferocity of the roar. Then there was a loud boom. The Empress moved her feet and flew into the air. In a few steps, she was near the village. Her eyes were red, and the darkness couldn't obstruct her vision. A 30-meter-long beast that looked like a giant rhinoceros but had an extremely long tail was charging towards a human figure that was much weaker than it. The figure didn't respond. He slid back dozens of meters, then flipped over and rushed behind the giant rhinoceros. The giant rhinoceros raised its head, opened its mouth, and spat out a mouthful of fire, lighting up half the night sky. The figure let out a painful groan and fell from the sky. He hurriedly dodged the giant rhinoceros's crazy trampling. He didn't even have time to check his injury before he flipped over and threw himself behind the giant rhinoceros. The spear in his hand smoothly stabbed into the side of the giant rhinoceros, but compared to the giant rhinoceros's size, the spear was equivalent to a toothpick. In addition, there was also a longevity celestial plane expert from the Earthen Spirit clan. With a roar, he flew up into the sky from the camp. The Empress glanced at them and could tell that this beast and the Earthen Spirit clan expert were at the intermediate level of the longevity heaven. This beast had thick skin and strong vitality. On the other hand, the Earthen Spirit clan expert already had the ability to fly in the sky. Both of them were quite difficult to deal with. However, the Earthen Spirit clan expert could run away, but this beast might not be able to. The Empress thought of something and took a step toward the Earthen Spirit clan expert. When the Earthen Spirit clan expert saw that the group of people who rushed in at night were the humans that the herdsman had mentioned before, he immediately roared and pounced down. "Get lost!" The burly Aboriginal man was called Xan Cho. As he roared, the sky seemed to explode with a sudden clap of thunder. The foreign races that rushed out suddenly felt pain in their ears and felt dizzy. Xan Cho's twisted and coarse mace smashed forward, and a strong wind suddenly blew within a radius of 100 meters. Unexpectedly, the Earthen Spirit clan expert didn't dodge. He blocked the mace with one hand and directly stabbed Xen Chao's chest with the other. Die! Xen Chao's muscles bulged, and he didn't retreat even half a step. Just as the opponent's hand was about to grab his chest, he slightly twisted his body to avoid the attack on his heart. With a hideous smile on his face, he continued to smash the mace in his hand. The right hand of the foreign race expert immediately pierced through Xen Chao's chest. However, Xen Chao threw away the mace in his hand and smashed into a house in front of him with Xian air. His two arms were like iron hoops as he hugged the waist of the Earthen Spirit Clan expert. His face was red, and his veins were bulging. It was as if he was squeezing the waist of the Earthen Spirit Clan expert. The Earthen Spirit Clan expert roared crazily, but he couldn't break free because they were only one level apart. The Empress descended from the sky and smashed the head of the Earthen Spirit Clan expert into pieces with one palm. Then, she used her fingers to cut off the arm of the Earthen Spirit Clan expert in disgust. Ha ha ha. Xan Chao's chest was pierced by an arm. He was breathing heavily, but he also let out a rather creepy laugh. The next time you die, I will find a good home for your corpse. I will put it in the stomach of a fearsome beast, the Empress said unhappily. Ha ha, I'm not dead yet. Xan Chao laughed heartily. As he slowly pulled his arm out of his chest, he spat out large mouthfuls of blood. However, just as he was about to pull his arm out, the hand suddenly moved and grabbed the side. If he hadn't sensed that something was wrong, his heart would have been grabbed out. Even so, he still managed to grab out half of his broken lung. He's not dead. The Empress was slightly stunned and then shocked. It was no wonder that this Earthen Spirit Clan expert died so quickly and didn't even have the strength to resist. Of course, there was Xen Chao's craziness, but there was also something strange about this. She saw that the Earthen Spirit Clan expert's completely broken head was gradually recovering. It crawled up from the ground and pounced towards the Empress while swaying. Immediately, the Empress kicked its upper body into pieces. The Empress frowned slightly. She saw the flesh on the half of the corpse wriggling, and the part that was completely broken by the Empress's kick actually began to grow back. In the distance, the giant rhinoceros-like beast knocked away the aboriginal expert and madly rushed towards the Empress. Every step it took caused a tremor in the ground. The Empress ignored the beast, looked at the half of the corpse, and sneered, "You want to grow back? It's not that easy." She immediately stepped forward and stomped on the corpse. The half-recovered corpse immediately exploded, and flesh and blood splattered everywhere. The beast rushed over and first opened its mouth to spit out a stream of fire. After forcing the Empress back, it turned around and swept its long tail with a horny meat hammer, smashing Xen Chao away. The Empress suddenly felt that the vitality of this beast seemed to have decreased a little. She looked at the flesh and blood of the Earthen Spirit Clan expert. Every piece of flesh was wriggling on the ground as if they were all alive. Countless pieces of flesh and blood quickly gathered in one place. The Empress immediately guessed what was going on. However, she still felt that it was a little unbelievable. She had never encountered or even heard of such a situation before. However, these foreign races each had their own strengths. She turned her head and looked around. In the other battles, the humans had the upper hand. The furry Earthen Spirit Clan didn't seem to be good at fighting. Instead, they were better at taming beasts. In the battlefield, a few foreign races surrounded an extremely powerful beast and fought with the human experts. The Empress immediately understood that the Earthen Spirit Clan wasn't good at fighting. Although this Earthen Spirit Clan expert had an extremely strange and strong vitality and could revive even if he was smashed into pieces, the problem probably didn't lie with him. Instead, it was with the giant beast that had a slightly weaker aura. "I just need to kill a few more times and I will know," the Empress guessed. She was neither shocked nor angry and only sneered. This person's combat power was so weak. So what if he could live a few more times? It would just take a little more effort. Chapter 1171. Seeing that the gigantic beast had sent the ancient race longevity heaven expert flying, the female Empress descended and punched the gigantic beast's head, producing a loud, dull sound. WWW? However, the Empress felt a strong rebounding force from her punch, and the giant beast only roared angrily. Its body moved, and its giant head came crashing towards the Empress like a moving mountain. The Empress moved and barely dodged it. She frowned slightly. Although this giant beast wasn't fast, its body was extremely strong. Even though she was one level higher than it, she couldn't do anything to it in a short period of time. The Empress was slightly tempted. This giant beast wasn't suitable for fighting experts, but was more suitable for killing on a large scale. The threat of such a giant beast on the battlefield was many times greater than those of the same level. If she could tame this beast, the Empress looked down at the wriggling flesh and blood, and a strange look appeared in her eyes. The pile of flesh and blood crawled together and formed 3 bodies of the longevity heaven experts from the Earth spirit race. Although only half of them had been formed, given enough time, perhaps 3 of them would really appear. This ability is really strange, the Empress thought to herself. At this moment, several balls of flames appeared out of thin air and ignited the 3 bodies. Ma Hongyu saw this and waved her brush in the air. After Ma Hongyu broke through to the heaven and earth domain, the distance she could draw in the air was much further. Previously, it was only 100 meters, but now, it was close to 1,000 meters. Furthermore, its power was several times stronger. The scorching smell of the flames and human bodies was disgusting. However, the 3 bodies split apart and fell from the body along with the flames. The flesh and blood below continued to grow. The giant beast roared at Ma Hongyu, then covered the 3 corpses with its body. This is interesting. The Empress's eyes were bloodshot. She moved and punched the giant beast with her fists like heavy rain, producing a series of dull thuds. Roar! The gigantic beast was probably hurt by the Empress's beating. Its body thrashed wildly on the ground as if it wanted to knock down the Empress who was above it. Ma Hongyu, keep an eye on those 3 corpses. Don't destroy them and don't let them come back to life. The Empress reminded Ma Hongyu while she was dodging. Her voice echoed throughout the battlefield. Previously, she had sensed that there seemed to be a connection between this remnant body and the gigantic beast. The gigantic beast had thick skin and flesh, making this remnant body much easier to deal with. Ma Hongyu's ability was extremely suitable for destroying the body of that alien under the protection of that fierce beast. Before the Empress opened her mouth, Ma Hongyu had been paying attention to this place. In other words, Ma Hongyu was paying attention to the situation on the battlefield. Whenever she saw a situation, she would help. Ma Hongyu's ability to see through the gazes of every corner of the battlefield, as well as his methods that were hard to defend against, were completely revealed at this moment. A ferocious beast pounced on an ancient race cardinal heaven expert. The eyes of the Earth Spirit Clan member flashed, and he seized the opportunity to throw the spear in his hand. However, Ma Hongyu's brush swept up a small whirlwind in the air. Dust flew in the wind, immediately blocking the Earth Spirit Clan member's line of sight. Following which, a stone pillar appeared out of thin air. The humans had the absolute advantage on the battlefield. This wasn't a common occurrence, but it happened from time to time. Sometimes, a few alien races would gather together and suddenly, flames or other things would appear out of thin air and disrupt their formation. Ma Hongyu's attention would always appear where it was needed. This kind of gaze that was as sharp as a knife could cut open the entire battlefield. He was always able to take action at the right time and control the situation. Coupled with his ability, he wasn't considered strong among the experts of the longevity heaven or the heaven and earth domain. In fact, he was at the bottom. However, coupled with his accurate gaze, he was always able to play a unique role. Naturally, he had always been paying attention to the position where the Empress was. Seeing that the gigantic beast got up and frantically attacked the Empress, Ma Hongyu pondered for a moment before stretching out his brush and waving it in the air. In just a moment, more than a dozen rather ugly stray dogs with missing ears and tails rushed forward to bite the remnant body parts. The gigantic beast was furious, but it was difficult to deal with such small and numerous creatures. With a swipe of its tail, the stray dogs and the remnant body parts would probably be turned into minced meat. Just as it was hesitating, a few stray dogs actually tore a few pieces of flesh from the remnant body parts and swallowed them. These stray dogs weren't strong or fast, and they weren't even comparable to a man-will expert. However, their teeth were extremely sharp. When Ma Hongyu was drawing, he added a sharp reflection to the teeth of the stray dogs. Half an hour later, most of the battles on the battlefield had ended. There were corpses of the alien races and flames everywhere. There was only one place where the battle hadn't stopped. The gigantic beast was still raging, but the Empress was like a mosquito to it. There was also a group of stray dogs below that took advantage of the situation to tear apart the remnant body parts that the beast was protecting. Currently, there were only 5 remnant bodies left. Under Ma Hongyu's harassment, they couldn't grow to more than half of their original size. If one were to sense carefully, they would realize that the life force of the gigantic beast was slipping away at an even faster rate. According to the plan, everyone will head to the Thousand Bone Races tribe. Be careful of the experts who will come to investigate and assist us. Rest 15 kilometers away from the Thousand Bone Races tribe until the battle ends here, the Empress said as she dodged a stream of fire in the air. This gigantic beast didn't have many means of attack. Other than relying on its tyrannical body, it could only spit fire from its mouth. After the Empress grasped its rhythm, she was able to easily lead it and was doing it with ease. Most of the people on the battlefield dispersed after hearing the Empress's command. Only a small number of people watched from afar. The remnant body parts of the gigantic beast were constantly being destroyed and regenerated. Everyone seemed to be able to vaguely hear the beast's soundless howls of anger. For hours later, just as the Empress had guessed, the movements of the gigantic beast were getting slower and slower. The loss of its life force had greatly affected its physical strength. Its body seemed to have shrunk a little, and its originally glossy fur had become dull. This battle seemed to be the end of its life. After another few minutes, the gigantic beast let out a mournful howl and slowly fell to the ground. The candle flame of its life was getting dimmer and dimmer. 4 of the remnant body parts had stopped growing and were rapidly decaying. Finally, they turned into a pool of blood. Only one body was left, and it was still struggling to fight for its last chance of survival. The brush in Ma Hongyu's hand had already stopped and his breathing was slightly weak. In fact, he didn't consume much energy. The Empress looked at the wriggling mass of flesh and blood. Its organs, upper body, neck, and head grew. Finally, it became an extremely old foreign race member. This seemed to have consumed the last of its energy. When all of this was completed, it fell to the ground and looked at the surrounding tribe that had been turned into ruins with eyes filled with anger and sorrow. Finally, it fixed its gaze on the Empress. With a strange tone that was filled with the deepest malice and resentment, it said, "Sinners, God will punish you. If your God really existed, you wouldn't have ended up like this," the Empress sneered. Dayo had no god and only believed in ancestral spirits. However, there were legends about the existence of gods in Great Xia. The Empress had come into contact with myths and legends on Earth, so she wasn't unfamiliar with them. God will punish you, God will punish you, God will punish you. The remaining foreign race member continued to curse viciously, as if he was cursing a village woman. Seeing him like this, the Empress gradually lost interest. Previously, she spared his life because she wanted to see if this foreign race member had any other tricks up his sleeves. Previously, this foreign race member shared life with the gigantic beast, which had piqued her interest. Now, it seemed like there wasn't any. Immediately, she smashed her fist into the air. The foreign race member didn't resist and immediately turned into a pile of flesh and blood. This time, it didn't continue to grow. Chapter 1172. Look around and see if there's anything valuable. The Empress glanced at the remaining people. She looked down at the foreign being and saw that he had already become minced meat. All his belongings were destroyed in the battle just now. The Empress took a step forward and stood in the air. She looked around and headed straight for the largest house. Although the Earth Spirit's combat power wasn't high, he had some unexpected tricks up his sleeve. This was the ability to share life force with the giant beast. As long as the giant beast still had life force, it could survive even if it was beaten into minced meat. It could even split into several parts. If it weren't for the fact that the human race had the upper hand from the very beginning and had confined him to a small area, his strange ability might have caused some trouble for them. The Empress thought about it further. If she had this method in future battles with the foreign races, she could share life force with some soldiers and increase their combat power greatly. A wound on a vital part could take a human's life. However, this foreign being didn't have any vital parts. Its only weakness was that it consumed the life force of the giant beast to regrow its flesh. Before it regained its flesh, it was almost defenseless. Just like this foreign being, it didn't have a chance to recover from the beginning. However, this wasn't considered a weakness. If it were someone else, they would have died long ago. It would be extremely difficult to deal with an enemy like this on the battlefield. However, this special ability had extremely high requirements. Otherwise, he wouldn't be the only one in this tribe to have it. If it could be widely used, this mid-tier race with low combat power wouldn't be able to keep this special ability. However, they had to try and maybe find a way. Even if they couldn't, it would be good to learn something useful from it. In the past, this world didn't have planes, but they did now. After a while, the Empress took out a bag with all the animal skin booklets inside. What surprised her was that the alien race spoke the human language, but used a different language. She had no idea what she had found inside. After she walked out, the house immediately collapsed, becoming the last piece of the puzzle in the ruins. The Empress turned to look at Xen Cho. Although most of the flesh had grown out of the hole in his chest, the injury to his lungs wasn't so easy to heal. Without a lung, his strength would be greatly reduced in the future. Return to the Wall of Two Worlds and walk 300 kilometers to the west. The humans will send you back to Dayo. You might be able to recover from your injuries, the Empress said coldly. There were more than 130 Cardinal Heaven and Spirit Wheel experts, including 9 from Longevity Heaven and Heaven Opening Domain. They had launched a surprise attack on a tribe that only had 2 Longevity Heaven experts and more than 20 Cardinal Heaven experts. Yet, one of them was seriously injured, which made the Empress rather unhappy. It can be cured? Xen Cho grinned with his mouth that was filled with the smell of blood. It seemed that the injury to his lungs did not bother him too much. When we return, listen to the Regent. Don't act recklessly, or you will be killed, the Empress said coldly. This Xen Cho was truly unbridled. Back when he was in the Cardinal Heaven realm, he was already quite wild. Now that he was in the Longevity Heaven realm, not only did he not restrain himself, he was even more unbridled. It had nothing to do with his personality, nor was he intentionally arrogant or relying on his strength. Instead, most of the aboriginals in the depths of the 60,000 mountains were like this. Or rather, most of the aboriginals in the depths of the 60,000 mountains were like this. His entire body was filled with a ferocious and violent aura. Otherwise, he wouldn't have risked his life to fight the middle-level Longevity Heaven expert head-on. She could suppress him here, but if he returned to Dayo, given his violent temperament, he might cause some trouble. Therefore, the Empress specially warned him. Remember my words. If you cause any trouble, I will destroy your entire village. The Empress glanced at him coldly. Her sharp gaze made Xen Cho's skin feel as if it was being cut by a knife, but he didn't care much. The distance between the 2 foreign tribes was more than 250 kilometers. Even a Cardinal Heaven expert would need at least 4 to 6 hours to get there. If he conserved his strength, he would need at least 10 hours to get there. The Empress caught up with them halfway through the journey, and it was already close to noon. Xen, there's someone ahead, about 25 kilometers away, Dongwasun suddenly said. Everyone immediately slowed down without the slightest doubt, even though it was difficult for Ma Hongyu and the other Heaven Opening Domain experts to detect them. However, Dongwasun was proficient in spying and assassination, and everyone knew that he had the ability to locate enemies from afar. About 100 people. Dongwasun, who looked like a young man in trousers, sniffled and said, Dao is brought by the wind from afar. The Empress turned her head and looked around. On one side was the Wall of Two Worlds, which was more than 3,000 meters tall, and on the other side was the land of fire poison that was difficult to see with one's eyes. It seems that the Qianggu tribe has really come to help. Let's wait for them here and wait for them. Ma Hongyu laughed. The empress nodded and said, "All right." There were less than 100 people from the foreign tribes, and there were only 3 longevity heaven experts in the Qianggu tribe. Without one of them, there were at most 2 of them, which posed no threat to them. 5 minutes later, Dongwu Sun suddenly exclaimed, raised his eyebrows and said, "They have stopped. They are heading back very quickly. Have they discovered us?" Dongwu Sun couldn't figure out how the other party had discovered them. However, the foreign tribes were strange, and he had just seen a monster that could regrow itself after being smashed into pieces. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that the other party had extraordinary abilities. Chase after them. The empress didn't hesitate at all. After a while, they caught up with the Qianggu tribe. Before they arrived, the Qianggu tribe had actually stopped and formed a formation. There were 4 rows of 22 people behind them, and the remaining 12 people were divided into 2 rows, with only 2 people standing at the front. This formation made everyone even more certain that the other party had already discovered their movements. The Qianggu tribe looked similar to humans, except that their faces and limbs were long and thin. There were bone spurs on their backs, and there was a pair of short daggers in each of their hands. The weaker the strength of the Qianggu tribe, the paler their bone spurs were. They had a metallic luster on them. The 2 longevity heaven experts' bone spurs were like dark metals, and they were black with a glossy luster. Leave 50 people behind. The rest go to the Qianggu tribe and don't let them escape, the empress said without hesitation when she saw the enemies forming a formation. Since the other party could discover them in advance, they must have already sent a message back. As if they understood the empress's words, the Qianggu tribe, which had already formed a formation, immediately let out a commotion. "Go!" An expert of the Qianggu tribe shouted. "Kill!" The empress ordered coldly. "Kill!" The expert of the Qianggu tribe shouted. Many of the Qianggu tribe suddenly changed their formation, turned around, and faced their opponents with their backs. Before they could react, the bone spurs on the backs of half of the Qianggu tribe suddenly detached from their bodies and shot toward them like arrows, covering most of them. Following this, the 4 rows of foreign races changed positions, and another batch of bone spurs shot over. That night, Renbaqian found out that the 2 tribes had been annihilated. Apart from Xan Cho, 2 more people from the Qianggu tribe died, and more than 10 people were injured by the bone spurs. The combat strength of the Qianggu tribe was slightly higher than that of the Earth Spirit tribe, but the most troublesome thing was their bone spurs. They were extremely fast, even faster than bullets, and extremely sharp. They shot over from all directions, and there were also some bone spurs from the cardinal heaven-level Qianggu tribe. If they were not careful, they would be injured. Furthermore, the Qianggu tribe was able to turn most of their bones into arrows before they died. If both parties were at the same level of strength, they would be shocked to encounter such a scene. The 2 experts who died were killed by them in this way. This made the empress more vigilant. These mid-level Qianggu tribe members were already so difficult to deal with. She wondered how powerful the 36-strong Qianggu tribe members were. Although these 2 tribes weren't very powerful, they each had their own unique characteristics. For example, the Earth Spirit tribe's most powerful technique was their ability to coexist with ferocious beasts. If the Earth Spirit tribe and the ferocious beasts were entangled in front, the Qianggu tribe would probably suffer even more casualties if they attacked from afar. The empress guessed that this was the reason why these 2 foreign races were guarding the wall of the 2 realm. Fortunately, with the elite strength of the human race, they were able to annihilate the 2 races separately with a crushing force. It was still relatively easy. If the army had encountered these 2 races in battle, they would probably have to be very distracted. Chapter 1173. After the empress hung up, she suddenly said, "I'll go back in 2 days." Renbaqian was subconsciously shocked. Could it be that she still remembered that matter until now? Was she really going to come back from the wall of the 2 worlds to bite him? That couldn't be. "Your Majesty, do you miss me?" Renbaqian probed. Without waiting for the empress to answer, he continued, "I miss you too." The empress's mouth twitched, and the words, "I want to bite you to death," were stuck in her throat. He didn't give her a chance to say them. I'll go to Qing Valley to pick you up. Renbaqian said. There's no need. Prepare a plane for me. The Empress hung up the phone after saying that. She pulled up her red muslin and saw a green mark that looked like an eye on her arm. The mark was on her arm, but it was covered by her sleeve. She didn't notice when it appeared. When she was on her way to the Thousand Bone Tribe, she accidentally found this mark on her arm. After thinking about it, she guessed that it was most likely left behind by that expert from the Earth Spirit race. Before he died, he kept muttering, "God will punish you." She thought that it was his resentment before he died, but when she found this mark on her arm, her first thought was that it was his doing. It was quite strange that she didn't notice it at all. Although she didn't know what it was for, she guessed that it had something to do with the god that the Earth Spirit race had mentioned. God? There are no gods in this world. Even if there are, they aren't humans. The Empress looked at the mark on her arm and sneered. She rubbed her skin with her hand and couldn't feel anything. She put down her sleeve. However, she couldn't do anything about it. The Earth Spirit race wasn't very strong, but there must be something special about them to be able to become a medium-sized race. Therefore, the Empress planned to go back and ask Renbaqian to bring her back to Earth to see if he could remove the mark on her arm. Previously, Renbaqian could directly bring other people's heaven-grade weapons back to Earth and cut off contact with their original owners. This might be a solution. Somewhere in this world, within a mountain range, there was an endless chain of altars, distributed on the peak of every mountain. On each altar was a stone statue that was 100 meters tall. The stone statue looked down slightly as if it was overlooking the Earth Spirit race and the beasts walking at the bottom of the mountain. Great Elder, one of our tribes has disappeared. An Earth Spirit wearing a crown studded with green gems walked in from a divine hall halfway up a mountain. Which tribe? An Earth Spirit clan elder wearing a necklace made of jade beads around his neck said in a deep voice in the hall. It seems to be a tribe that split off a few thousand years ago. Their token is broken. Can you find the direction? There has been no news of them for thousands of years, and the token suddenly shattered just now. Great Elder, could it be the doing of the upper 36 clans? They have an agreement with us. The old man of the Earth Spirit clan remained silent for several breaths before he said, "Ask people to prepare the sacrificial offerings. Inform the deities of this matter in 10 days. The Black Sky God will definitely guide us and bring disaster to our enemies. No one can slaughter the people of the Black Sky God without being punished." 10 days later, offerings were placed on countless altars in the mountains. Countless Earth Spirits with one or more agate necklaces were kneeling in front of the altars, chanting all kinds of praises. Then, countless Earth Spirits formed a circle in front of the altars and danced. Black Sky God, your people and descendants offer you endless piety and respect. Please guide us to find the murderers who slaughtered your people. Please guide us to bring endless disaster to our enemies. This kind of ceremony lasted for an entire day. Suddenly, a stone statue opened its mouth and spat out a black gem. The Black Sky God has responded to us. The cheers suddenly spread from one mountain to another, and then into the distance. All the mountains were in an uproar. The next day, the Great Elder threw the black gem to an Earth Spirit wearing a crown. The enemies are in the northeast. This divine stone will guide you to find them and defeat them. Yes, Great Elder. How many people should I bring? The enemies are far away. Bring a group of warriors and 5 giant beasts of disaster. I will inform the 36 clans. 3 days later, countless Earth Spirit warriors riding wild beasts galloped out of the mountains. The mountains trembled as they galloped. Behind the countless warriors of the Earth Spirit clan were 5 terrifying beasts that looked like moving mountains. In Daeyo's imperial court, Renbaqian asked the guards to bring in boxes and place them in the hands of every minister. These are? Great Elder Shurqing opened the lid and immediately saw a total of 12 bottles inside. Each bottle contained a crystal that was the size of 2 fingers. Are these crystals? Tong Jingye used a small wooden clip in the box to pick out a crystal from the glass bottle. Immediately, an extremely abundant vitality rushed straight to his face. Tong Jingye took a few deep breaths, and his face revealed a satisfied expression as his body trembled. What a comfortable feeling, Tong Jingye murmured. Is this the environment outside the wall of the two realms like this? I want to resign and follow in Her Majesty's footsteps. Let's go. I won't send you off. I find you an eyesore. Qin Chuan's gloomy voice sounded from the side. Most of the people in the imperial court took out a crystal from the bottle. After feeling the abundant vitality emitted from it, they were quite satisfied and put it back into the bottle. Everyone was careful because this thing wasn't easy to obtain. They had waited for more than a year for this. Is this all? Tu-Wan asked. It's too little. Also, why do I see more crystals from Great Elder and Young Elder than me? This was what most people were thinking. There were indeed too few crystals in the hands of everyone. According to what Rinpoche had said before, these crystals would only last for less than 2 months. After all, the number of crystals is limited, and it's impossible to supply them in large quantities. The 2 elders will each receive 12 crystals, the 6 ministers will each receive 11 crystals, the 24 ministers will each receive 10 crystals, and the deputy ministers will each receive 9 crystals, Rinpoche explained. In addition, the protectors of the 5 protectorates will each receive 11 crystals, and the deputy protectors will each receive 10 crystals. There are also some Cardinal Heaven experts who aren't officials but aren't Cardinal Heaven experts will each receive 5 crystals. There were less than 3,000 level 4 crystals in total. Using this method, more than 700 crystals were distributed at one time. These level 4 crystals could only be distributed 4 times at most, which was 2 years' time. As for whether it wasn't enough, everyone would have to think of a solution themselves. The ores that were sent back were only made into these crystals? Tu-Wan was puzzled. There were a lot of ores sent back, and everyone was paying attention to them. However, the amount produced was too little. This is part of it. This type of crystal was a 4th grade crystal. Below them are level 5 crystals. Rinpoche asked the guards to bring everyone a bottle containing a level 5 crystal. There are a total of 10,000 of these level 5 crystals. I will reward a portion of them to those who have made great contributions to the imperial court, regardless of their level of cultivation. Rinpoche smiled. For example, the people from the academy have made great contributions to the imperial court over the years. The changes in Dayo today are inseparable from them. I believe that all of you won't deny this, right? In addition to them, there are also some officials from various ministries who have made great contributions to the imperial court. The examination office has a tally of these people. Although the imperial court has already given them rewards, these crystals are another form of favor and recognition from the imperial court. Everyone nodded slightly as they couldn't find fault with this point. In addition, I want to hold a martial arts competition to select human elites who will be rewarded for training. I will also take out a portion of the crystals as the prizes for this competition. Can I participate? Qin Chuan suddenly asked. It wasn't just him. Many people in the imperial court also looked tempted. Rinpoche really wanted to ask if they were shameless. Cough. No, there is an age limit this time. We want to select young people with potential, especially those who don't have official positions and are wandering outside. If you have a capable nephew, you can let them participate, Rinpoche said with a sullen face. Finally, I will take out 5,000 crystals and sell them in the market. The money will be used to subsidize the investment in the south. Seeing that Rinpoche had arranged everything clearly, everyone was speechless. However, there was one more thing that Rinpoche didn't mention. There were still more than 800 level 3 crystals. If he did, these people would definitely be skinned alive. He was going to use them to reward those who had made great contributions in the future. Chapter 1174. In the lecture hall of the Black Bamboo Academy. Looking at the students sitting below with bright eyes, Rinpoche felt a sense of satisfaction. These young people were the future of this world and the fruits of his hard work over the years. There were aboriginals, Jing tribe, and people from the Yun nation. As time went on, the number of people in these 2 areas increased. Rinpoche stood on the stage with a smile and spoke in a heavy voice. Knowledge is power. The fist is only the power of the physical body, but it can't move the world, while knowledge can. Armor can arm your body, but knowledge can arm your mind. The power of the physical body is only a narrow range, but the mind allows you to get close to the truth of the world through your knowledge, thereby becoming stronger and having a wider range of power. The power of the physical body brings destruction and ruins, while the power of knowledge brings prosperity and civilization, creation and value. Look at the capital today, look at this city, and think about the places you used to live and go. All of this is brought about by knowledge. Trains, cars, airplanes, electric lights, telephones, and projections, these are the values created by knowledge. The essence of knowledge is the changes we bring to this world when we understand the various phenomena of this world and search for the essence of the world. The Academy Award was created to reward those students who have made contributions in academia and realized their value in creation. You have brought a better side to this world. After finishing his speech and listening to the applause of the students below, Rinpoche paused for a moment before continuing. The Academy Award will be held annually in the future to reward those who have made outstanding contributions. Now, the award for the Best Industrial Design of the Year. Research on the control method of an aero engine based on the Lyapunov function, by Shiryu. Tong Lan and Shirgan's expressions changed slightly as they looked at a girl in the same row. They didn't expect her to be the first winner of the Academy Award. A delicate and pretty girl in her 20s looked at Rinpoche in surprise and couldn't react for a moment. Don't just stand there. Go up. Su Ping poked her shoulder from behind. You will forever be remembered in the history of the Black Bamboo Academy, and your photo will be hung in the Hall of Fame. Rinpoche smiled. The Academy is proud of you. After Shiryu recovered from his shock, he ran up to the stage and heard those words. His eyes reddened and he almost cried. As a commoner student, he had gone from being illiterate to being the only commoner student in the bachelor's class. He had gone through a lot of hardships, and temptations. The other commoner students had long since joined the workforce, and many of them had even become 6th or 5th rank officials in the Ministry of Works. They had long since improved their family situation. She was the only one who persisted and devoted herself to endless study and research. Many times, she had thought of leaving the academy and working in various departments. Her family situation would be much better. It was just that she preferred the atmosphere in the academy and the process of constantly learning new knowledge. This sudden award made her feel that everything she had done before was worth it. He then picked up a box from the side and opened it to reveal a bottle. This was 50 crystals. The students below immediately revealed looks of envy, and the applause became even more intense. These days, the news of origin crystals had already spread out. Or rather, it could be said that under Rinpoche's push, the news spread to everyone through the newspapers and other news channels. No one could ignore the value of origin crystals. It could increase the speed of cultivation. Just this alone was enough to make countless people go crazy. This was especially true for people who weren't aboriginals. Before reaching the cardinal heaven level, origin crystals were valuable to the aboriginals, but food with sufficient energy was more valuable. However, for the warriors of the Jing tribe and the Yun nation, origin crystals could be absorbed into the body and transformed into essence qi along with the blood essence, speeding up the speed of cultivation. For the warriors who had reached the earth embryo realm and began to interact with the outside world, this speed was greatly accelerated. It could even help increase the chances of breaking through the path to heaven. For the spirit and cardinal heaven-level warriors, origin crystals were even more useful. Under such circumstances, how could the world not go crazy? However, origin crystals were currently only in the hands of a few people. Only the court officials who had reached the cardinal heaven level had a small amount of them. In the outside world, the price of origin crystals had already skyrocketed. Even level 5 origin crystals were the same. A level 5 origin crystal was equivalent to 100 taels of gold. These 50 origin crystals were equivalent to 5,000 taels of gold and 50,000 taels of silver. Coupled with entering the Academy's Hall of Fame, as long as one's name was recorded in history, how could the students not be envious? Thank you, thank you. Shiryu choked with sobs. You deserve it. Rinpoche smiled. The reason why this award was held in such a high-profile manner was partly to commend the students, but most importantly, it was to stimulate the enthusiasm of the students. As for whether sure you would get into trouble for possessing these origin crystals, Rinpoche believed that no one in the capital would dare to target the students of the academy. As for whether sure you would sell them, this was for sure because these origin crystals weren't very valuable to her. Sure Yu's talent could only be considered average. Besides, it would be better for the Aboriginals to exchange the origin crystals for Earth-level beast meat. Furthermore, her family's situation would also improve. After all, Sure Yu came from an ordinary family and wasn't well off. In addition, Rinpoche wanted to inflate the price of the origin crystals so that he could release the remaining few thousand origin crystals. Sure Yu was just the beginning. Next is the Best Scientific and Technological Progress Award of the Year. Some expansion of the hydrodynamic equation around the flow problem, Aerodynamic Research Group. This time, it was a group of 4 people who were 1 year younger than Tong Lan and the others. The 4 of them smiled very brightly. Although the origin crystals were very valuable to them, it was far less meaningful than the recognition of their research. After the 4 of them left, 2 more awards were handed out, and it was time for the highlight. Next is the Most Valuable Award of the Year. Giant Automatic Circulation Control Calculator, Electric Machinery Group's Ancient Crystal, Ancient Water, and Xiong'an. Rinpoche announced loudly with a smile on his face. That's right, this was the biggest surprise he had recently received. The so-called Giant Automatic Circulation Control Calculator could actually be called a relay calculator. This was a real computer, the prototype of a modern computer. Although the researchers had done research on this and made much faster progress than the students, the researchers were all scientists that Rinpoche had abducted from various countries, and computers had long been integrated into their lives. They had sufficient understanding and cognition of computers, so Rinpoche placed the most important part in the research institute. However, the students of the academy were different. They didn't know much about computers and didn't even have a concept of them. It was just that a few of the students wanted to solve the large amount of data involved in their studies and research. As a result, they wanted to design a device that allowed them to be lazy. Although the giant calculator had a very slow speed of operation, only being able to perform addition and subtraction 4 times in 1 second and multiplication and division every 10 seconds, it could be said to be very primitive and slow. However, this couldn't hide the brilliance of wisdom that it was full of. From a certain perspective, lazy people could change the world. First, set a small goal, such as 1 second. Remember, Scholar House. Chapter 1175. After the Black Bamboo Academy Awards, it was time to reward the mid-level and low-level officials who had made outstanding contributions. For example, the officials from the Department of Commerce who had made great contributions to the promotion of the Jinkala fertilizer, the officials from the Public Order Bureau who had made great contributions to stopping the theft, robbery, of manhole covers, the officials from the Department of Transportation who had improved the situation of violent car racing on the highway from Lan City to Chuyun Prefecture, the supervisors who had strictly enforced the safety of the mines and ensured that there hadn't been any major casualties for 3 consecutive years. The names of a batch of low-level officials who weren't well known and didn't have high strength but had performed well in their posts were published in the newspapers. And the prizes were all origin crystals. After the Black Bamboo Academy and the large-scale awards, the enthusiasm of the students and officials was fully aroused, and the enthusiasm of the market was also aroused. In particular, some crystals entered the market and were instantly placed on the desks of many officials, aristocratic families, and the upper echelons of the chambers of commerce. After confirming the effects of the crystals and their abundant vitality, even though the vitality released was limited and could only be used for a short period of time, it was still wildly sought after by the entire market. 1 crystal cost 100 taels of gold and could only be used for 1 day. However, it was extremely cost-effective for breaking through to the next level. For some people, money was never the most important issue. Seeing the popularity of the market, even some officials were tempted and wondered if they should sell a few of the level 4 crystals they had. At this time, Rinpoche put the remaining 5,000 crystals into the market. After limiting the number of individual purchases, they were sold out in just half a day, earning a huge income of 5 million taels of silver, which was used to increase the investment in the 60,000 mountains. If there were enough crystals, Rinpoche believed that even if the price was reduced to half today, the sales alone would be enough to maintain the rapid development of technological products and the construction of public facilities in Dayo. What is the soul? What is the spirit? What is the divine sense? This is the greatest mystery of mankind. On Earth, from religion to science, countless people have been guessing and searching, but there has never been a real conclusion. However, this world is different. The existence of the divine sense gives us the possibility to explore. Although the concept of the divine sense in this world has always been difficult for me to understand, I have asked many people, especially those who carry swords on their backs, and they seem to have mixed it up. However, in my opinion, this isn't the case. The divine sense, which I find very strange in this world, has a unique characteristic. His divine sense could actually interact with the external world, allowing him to become even stronger. Moreover, the divine sense was actually visible, touchable, and materialized. What was divine sense? Was it a soul? Why could it interact with the world? How could he condense a divine weapon? Your Highness, boss, you have to know that this is a real miracle. In the interaction between the divine sense and the outside world, what kind of process takes place that causes matter to appear? Your Highness, divine sense is what we need to study the most. This is God's domain. Thinking of this, my heart was about to jump out of my chest. I need research subjects. He fell into deep thought as he listened to the long-winded narration of the big-nosed woman. Not only did they want to know the answer to this question, but he also wanted to know the answer. In fact, he had a certain understanding of the soul, spirit, and divine sense. The way he saw it, the soul was the carrier of the spirit, the existence of a person. Spirit, on the other hand, was the fluctuation of the soul. It was a process of one's thoughts and perception. However, divine sense was different from the other two. The soul consciousness was the method and means for the soul to perceive everything. It was the hands and feet of the soul, and it was the extroversion of the soul. This distinction was very subtle and easy to confuse. He didn't know if he was right. In fact, he was very interested in this research and had this idea for a long time. It was just that he didn't have the ability, the time, or the appropriate tools for observation and detection. Now that vitality had been discovered and some tools could be made, it was time to start research in this area. Although most of the experts who had condensed a divine weapon had gone to the Lansong territory to fight against the foreign races, there were still a few suitable candidates. You can leave first. I will consider this matter. Rinpoche waved his hand. After thinking for a while, he contacted Li Yuanzhu and invited her to the capital. On one hand, it was to discuss the youth competition. Without her, it would be difficult to expand the scope to Great Xia. On the other hand, it was to use the Yuan crystals. After all, Li Yuanzhu had to stay in Great Xia to guard the internal affairs. Otherwise, she would have already become a heaven and earth region expert. As a top genius who wasn't inferior to the empress, she was more important than the ministers in the imperial court. Finally, she was invited to participate in some research work. Well, to be studied. Moreover, there was Lin Yu by her side. Her mind and body were seriously out of line, and the Wi-Fi signal for her mind was intermittent. Presumably, she would make outstanding and unparalleled contributions to the research work. There was a radio station at Li Yuanzhu's place and a person who specialized in receiving information from the radio station. It didn't take long for her to receive a definite reply. Of course, she still didn't know what the so-called research work was. After finishing this, he got someone to inform Honeysuckle and the ministers in the imperial court. He also got someone to wake up Lin Xiaola, who had been sleeping for decades, and prepared to make a trip to the Yun residence. Wang Jing. He only brought a team of guards and Lin Xiaola with him. Now that he was at the Earth Embryo realm, he had enough ability to protect himself. There weren't many experts left in either Great Xia or the Yun nation. An hour later, he got on a plane to Wangjing. This wasn't a mature route, and even the airport in Wangjing was very simple. Other than a low brick building outside the city, there were only 2 runways that had just been repaired. Everyone boarded the plane with a parachute and was ready to jump at any time. Fortunately, there weren't any problems along the way, except for the terrible flight experience. 5 hours later, Renbachian felt like his body was about to fall apart. He swayed his body parts as he boarded the car to welcome the team. It was already afternoon, and he first went to the palace of the Yun nation. This was his first time here. The remaining eunuchs were guarding this huge building complex. The dilapidated buildings had been lacking maintenance for more than a decade. From time to time, they would see dust and lifeless palaces. All of this indicated that the Yun nation had long been swept clean of history. Early the next morning, Renbachian went to the seaside and looked at the 2 giant steel ships docked near the huge dock. The so-called giant steel ships were just 2 steamships that were about 140 meters long, 13 meters wide, and had a displacement of 3,400 tons. They were powered by 2 diesel engines with a power of 72,000 horsepower. In terms of size, they were far inferior to the Titanic, which sank during its first voyage in the early 20th century. That cruise ship, which sailed in 1912, was 269 meters long and had a displacement of 66,000 tons. However, compared to this world where humans were limited to a range of 1,000 meters from the coast, where the maritime industry was extremely undeveloped and the exploration rate of the ocean was extremely low, these 2 ships could already be considered behemoths. They were also the most advanced ships. Even though it was early in the morning, there were many people near the dock talking about the 2 giant steel ships in the distance. This popularity hadn't stopped for the past month. Previously, trains and cars, which were made of steel and didn't require animal power to run, had already shocked the people of the Yun nation. Now, even the ships were made of steel. Just like the history on Earth, the most discussed topic was why the steel ships didn't sink and how they could move without sails and oars. First, set a small goal, such as 1 second. Chapter 1176. Your Highness. A row of aboriginals in neat leather armor greeted him respectfully. Guangsha Literature Network. Renbachian nodded with a smile and looked at the short and strong young man at the front of the group. He seemed to have thought of something, and his eyes were filled with reverie. He smiled and asked, "One Piece?" "Principal." The young man smiled sheepishly. This young man was Chao Zhong, the freshman who almost dropped out of school after watching One Piece. More than 10 years have passed in the blink of an eye. Renbachian lamented as if he could still vaguely see the scene of that young man standing in front of him and saying that he wanted to drop out of school. Although his great dream of dropping out of school to become a pirate king didn't come true, it planted a seed in his heart. Now, that seed had finally taken root and sprouted. After learning that the imperial court wanted to build steel ships to explore the sea, he volunteered to join. "Introduce them." Renbachian smiled. "This is the Conqueror, and that's the Conqueror. It's 142 meters long, 12.9 meters wide, 3,380 tons of displacement, 3,760 tons of full load, 19 knots of speed. It can carry 122 people. It has a top speed of 19 knots, a range of 12 knots, and can last up to 30 days. As he listened to Chao Zhong, Renbachian walked closer and reached out to touch the steel shell of the Conqueror. It was cold to the touch and had a little fishy smell. After boarding the ship along the gangway, the view in front of them suddenly widened. The blue ocean extended to the end of their line of sight and gradually turned black. "How much do we understand about the troposphere now?" Renbachian asked as he looked into the distance. The troposphere was a sharp blade in this world's ocean and also a barrier that blocked the footsteps of humans and confined them firmly on land. The troposphere generally appeared a few kilometers to tens of thousands of meters away from the coast. From the outside, there seemed to be no trace of it at all. However, a few meters below the surface of the sea was full of chaotic and turbulent undercurrents, as if countless hands were tearing at it. Ships that entered the troposphere were almost unable to escape. Even steel-hulled steamships would find it difficult to escape if they were caught in it. Needless to say, there were countless strange marine creatures in the troposphere, which were also a great danger to ships. The observatory's research institute has placed observation devices underwater several times. Although they soon lost contact with the strange water, it didn't mean that they didn't discover anything. I don't know what the undercurrent in the troposphere contains, but it has a slight effect on the signal. Also, the undercurrent is very fast. In a short time, the observation device will be swept to a place where the signal can't reach. Under the ocean, there seems to be something affecting the water flow. We found many whirlpools underwater, which is an important reason for the formation of the undercurrent. The ocean is very deep, and there seems to be a huge crack under the water 10,000 meters away, as if it was cut by a sharp axe. At present, we don't know the extent of the troposphere. The detection range on the surface of the sea has exceeded 300 kilometers, but it still hasn't broken through the troposphere. Moreover, there are turbulent undercurrents in the air above the sea beyond 300 kilometers, and some extreme weather often occurs. The observation station has sent several drones to explore the outer area, but they were destroyed beyond 300 kilometers. Renbachien had already understood most of the situation, but he still wanted to hear more from Chao Zhong. "Let's go and take a look. Let me see how good you guys are," Renbachien said. "Yes." Chao Zhong proudly ordered everyone to prepare. "Have all of you learned how to swim?" Renbachien suddenly asked with a smile. Chao Zhong's expression froze for a moment before he embarrassedly said, "I suffered a lot in order to learn how to swim." Most of the aboriginals were landlubbers and had the temperament of a steelyard. They sank to the bottom once they entered the water. It was fine if they were close to the shore as they could stabilize their bodies and walk out of the water. Otherwise, they would die. This batch of marine pioneers suffered a lot on this and drank a lot of seawater. Not long after, the conquerors sounded its whistle. "It's actually moving." Tiskeiske, it can actually move without sails and oars, relying on the waves. It's all thanks to the waves. Many onlookers on the shore were surprised to see the ironclad warship, which had been docked for a few days, suddenly moving. The ship didn't go too far, only about 9 kilometers away. When they turned back, they could still see the shore, so the ship stopped. At this time, the ocean had already taken on a dark blue color, and a little further ahead, the ocean had already turned black. "Your Highness, the troposphere is just ahead." Renbachien nodded and stared at the surface of the ocean in front of him. Apart from the change in color, he didn't see much difference. Although there were waves on the surface of the ocean, it seemed relatively calm. "Release the marker," Renbachien instructed. "Get ready to release the marker," Chao Zhong immediately shouted. A moment later, a red wooden ball with a diameter of 2 meters was released from the ship. This wood was very dense and didn't reach the bottom of the water after being thrown into the water. Soon, Renbachien saw that the ocean seemed to be enraged. Although there weren't many changes on the surface, the wooden ball under the water began to move rapidly and irregularly at a high speed. This was the effect of the undercurrent under the water. In just a moment, the wooden ball suddenly shattered as if it had been hit by a heavy hammer. It turned into countless pieces of wood that continued to float in the water. This was the power of the undercurrent. Under the power of countless undercurrents, it could even deform steel. Huge waves suddenly appeared on the surface of the ocean, and a huge object suddenly emerged from the water. It looked like an octopus tentacle that extended more than 30 meters out of the water. It twisted and swayed on the surface of the water, and there was a huge mouth full of sharp teeth at the top. "This kind of piece of firewood is everywhere under the water," Chao Zhong said. "My strength isn't particularly strong, but there are too many of them." This wasn't a tentacle of a huge monster, but its body looked like this. After finishing his sentence, he picked up a bow from the side, drew it, and knocked an arrow. An arrow pierced through the air and pierced the swaying tentacle, immediately creating a big hole. Blue blood sprayed everywhere. The surface of the sea suddenly churned, and the tentacle frantically slapped in all directions. Even a big hole wasn't considered fatal to this kind of creature. Compared to its body size under the water, The body size of this huge monster on the surface only took up 1/3 of its body size. A piece of firewood? Rinpoche turned his head doubtfully. This name sounded awkward no matter how he listened to it. Hey, this is what we call them in private. The people at the observatory call them heterogeneous leeches. Chao Zhong laughed. Are there many of these things under the water? Yes, they are everywhere. With such a body size, they should need a lot of food, right? Do they have so much food? There are more marine life under the water than expected, especially those undercurrents. Although they are turbulent, they also suck in a large number of fish from afar. How do these things not get torn apart by the undercurrents under the water? Rinpoche listened to Chao Zhong's explanation and nodded gently from time to time. He looked into the distance and sighed. It seemed like there was still a long way to go to solve the mystery of the ocean. However, this wasn't the most important thing. At present, the most important thing was to find a route along the coastline. As for whether they could achieve their goal, no one knew now. Although the ocean looked very deep, there was a troposphere outside and a coastline inside. There was only such a curved path for ships to pass through, and no one knew if they would get stuck by a submerged reef somewhere. Fupin Chinese. Chapter 1177. Rinpoche didn't stay long in Wangjing. He stayed for 2 days to understand the situation before returning. He also left behind a batch of new detection equipment that he brought back from Earth. There was a mosquito-sized flying detector with a detection range of more than 10 kilometers and an underwater detector with a detection range of 5 kilometers. These two new equipment would increase their chances of success in this exploration. Yu Qing ran away again? Rinpoche returned to the palace and shook his head when he heard the news. Erhua was getting older, so Rinpoche couldn't keep calling her by her nickname. Although he paid attention to her from time to time, he didn't discipline her too much. As long as she passed the curriculum, she could do whatever she wanted. Erhua was straightforward and chivalrous. Although she grew up in the palace, she had strong habits of the pugilistic world. She liked to wield weapons and make friends, but she didn't like politics. After all, this world was completely different from Earth. Rinpoche didn't expect her to put much effort into politics. Moreover, with the Empress's strength, she would live for at least 300 years, and it was unknown whether Erhua would inherit the throne. If she put too much effort into politics, she might really cause trouble in the future. This was something Rinpoche didn't want to see, so he didn't force her when he saw that she didn't like it. At this time, Erhua didn't know that her father was back. She was calling her friends in the Shanhui restaurant, banging on the table and singing. Erhua's 5 notes wasn't complete. Although her voice was good, it was a different matter when she sang it. Fortunately, with everyone around, it didn't stand out and was very lively. Monk, let's form a band, shall we? Erhua was a little tipsy as she pulled Xingrua aside and muttered, "The princess is drunk." Xingrua chuckled. "I'm not drunk. I've been thinking about it for a long time. Let's form a heavy metal rock band, and you will be the lead singer." Erhua patted Xingrua's shoulder and laughed heartily. Xingrua was stunned for a long time and laughed bitterly. She couldn't imagine what it would be like for a monk to sing heavy metal rock. Although the group of foreigners had been sent away, Xingrua's experience during that period put her in a predicament. She couldn't clear the spiritual purification platform and didn't know where to go. She would come here from time to time to drink with Erhua. Even though the surroundings were lively, she felt much more peaceful and stayed in the capital. She didn't expect the princess to suddenly make such a suggestion. Honeysuckle didn't mind Xingrua's rejection again. Instead, he put one arm on the table and smiled like a flower. No one knew what fun things he was thinking about. After a short while, her cheeks puffed up again, and her eyes squinted. She looked like a young girl. Another month passed. Zhenren Li is here? Let's invite him in. Rinpoche pushed aside the official documents on his desk and stretched himself. There were too many matters to attend to in the imperial court, big and small, and it was truly too much for him to handle. It made him want to throw them all away and go sailing by himself. Not long after, they saw the otherworldly woman dressed in Taoist robes. She was still as beautiful as ever, but she gave off a feeling that she was not tainted by the mortal world at all. It was as if she was floating in the air and would be gone with the wind at any time. Immortal Li, how have you been? Rinpoche stood up with a smile and took a few steps forward. The distance between them was only a few feet. He didn't know why, but he always wanted to shake hands with her to see if she was really untainted by dust. With this thought in mind, Rinpoche really stretched out his hand. Zhao Prince Consort. She looked at his right hand, which was still stained with ink, with a tinge of doubt in her eyes. It's a courtesy, a handshake, to show that both parties are friendly. Rinpoche insisted on not withdrawing his hand. Seeing that she didn't respond, he reached out and grabbed her hand. He didn't feel too touched by her ice skin and jade bones, but he was finally satisfied when he saw the ink stains on her fingers. She couldn't help but smile. Seeing an immortal-like person like Zhenren Li always makes me want to pull him back into the mortal world. Rinpoche laughed heartily and took a step back. He saw that Lin Yu, who was beside him, seemed to be lost in her thoughts again. Mr. Lin. Rinpoche called out tentatively. Although she wasn't very smart, she was still a top-notch expert, and calling her Mr. was a form of respect. It wasn't good to call her Madam or Mississippi. After half a minute, Lin Yu dragged her voice and said in a daze, "Ah, it's Prince Consort. You still haven't recovered?" Rinpoche asked. It had been more than 10 years, but Lin Yu's strength hadn't changed at all, and the situation where she was dozens of beats slower hadn't improved at all. "I'm 2 seconds faster than before." She nodded slightly. Rinpoche calculated in his mind. That meant that she had improved from 32 seconds to 30 seconds, right? She was still dial up the internet. Is the world of Great Xia still stable? Rinpoche asked casually. She nodded gently. In fact, when had the world ever been stable? However, the top group of people had left, and the remaining people were just small fries. In particular, how could it be possible to hide the fact that the organization had incorporated those top-notch experts? They didn't even think of hiding it. Almost everyone knew that there was an extremely powerful secret organization in the dark. Moreover, there hadn't been any news of those experts for so many years, and many people were guessing whether they were still alive. As a result, conspiracy theories were prevalent, and many people were much more cautious. "You've worked hard," Rinpoche said. "How's the situation over there?" Li Yuanzhu asked. In fact, she was the one who should have gone to the wall of the two worlds. With her talent, she was far superior to the Empress. However, in order to suppress the world, she stayed in Great Xia. It could be said that Rinpoche felt a little guilty towards her. He immediately told her everything he knew about the wall of the two worlds, the foreign races, and the situation. In fact, it wasn't much. Even now, everyone knew very little about the foreign races. The Grey Thorn race, which wasn't far from where the Empress and the others were hiding, was a weak race and knew very little about the outside world. After all, the Wall of the Two Worlds was a remote place. Even the Qinggu race didn't know much about it and only heard a little from the caravans. There's not much time left. Li Yuanzhu's expression changed slightly. If they touched those two foreign tribes, the foreign races would probably react very soon. There's not much time left. Rinpoche sighed. He only hoped to delay as much as possible. He then relaxed and smiled. However, it's not like we didn't gain anything. After saying that, he picked up a bottle from the table and took out a level 4 origin crystal from it. Wisps of vitality immediately emanated from it. Is this the origin crystal that the prince mentioned? Li Yuanzhu took it and carefully sensed it. It's indeed a good thing. If we had discovered it earlier, we wouldn't have had to worry so much. Hey, it's a good thing. Lin Yu grabbed the origin crystal in a flash. She held it tightly in her hand and refused to let go. Rinpoche smiled and shook his head. He asked someone to bring 15 level 4 crystals and 5 level 3 crystals to Li Yuanzhu. I hope you can break through as soon as possible, Rinpoche said. He then talked about other matters. The martial arts conference was easy to arrange. Even though those experts had left, their disciples still remained in Great Xia. These people included the majority of the elites in the Jianghu of Great Xia. In addition, they also had good friends. Most of the young elite's friends were of a similar level. In this way, they wouldn't lose too many friends. One more thing. Mirror Moon Deity and Swift Thunder Hands are dead. If their descendants are willing, they can move to Dayo. Most of the martial arts techniques in the martial arts hall can be opened to them. If they are unwilling, I can make the decision to send them 50 level 5 origin crystals every year. If they have any difficulties, they can also contact the rearguard commandery. Mirror Moon Deity and Swift Thunder Hands were the two experts who died during the destruction of the Chenggu race. Li Yuanzhu felt it was a pity that the death of these elites was one less. However, she still said, "In that case, I will thank the prince on their behalf. It's what I should do." Rinpoche waved his hand. No matter why these people joined, they were fighting for the human race and eventually lost their lives. He had to take care of them so that those experts wouldn't have to worry about them. After talking about this, Rinpoche said, "There's another important matter that I need your help with." Is it to study the spirit and heaven-grade weapons? Li Yuanzhu already knew a little before coming. Many experts have gained some insights over the years. I don't know if it will be of any help. Just 2 of you will be enough. Rinpoche smiled. The insights of many experts were mostly personal experiences. Although Rinpoche needed them, he didn't value them too much. He valued the research subjects more so that he could conduct systematic analysis and research. Chapter 1178. How are you, Miss Li? You are incomparably beautiful. I hope that our cooperation will be pleasant. I need to know some of your body data and what your heaven-grade weapon is. What can you do with your spirit when you're not using it? We need to observe some changes when you exchange your energy. We also need you to cooperate with us in some experiments. Body data? Observation? Li Yuanzhu was stunned when she arrived at the research institute and found out what she was going to do. Even with her calmness, there was some anger in her eyes. He would never have thought that he was actually here to be experimented on. The big-nosed man in front of her didn't notice her anger and kept saying things like instruments, experiments, and observations, which made her feel bad. If it were someone else, they would have flown into a rage. However, Li Yuanzhu was much calmer than others. She knew that this research was very important, so she didn't flare up. She turned to look at Lin Yu, who was scared out of her wits, and laughed bitterly. "Oh? You didn't flare up?" Rinpoche smiled when he heard this. Li Yuanzhu had a good sense of the overall situation, but this was also the reason that restrained her. As long as it was for the human race, she would endure even if it was a little offensive or difficult. Of course, she couldn't go overboard. Rinpoche had already confirmed that, from a certain point of view, such people were easy to bully. It was true. As long as it was from a righteous point of view, most people wouldn't refuse. Rinpoche liked this kind of person. From a certain point of view, this kind of person was much easier to deal with than the Empress. This was true for most people, but in terms of his personal position, the Empress was better. To most people, the Empress was good and evil. Most of the time, she acted according to her own preferences, but she was very tolerant of people she liked. She was a typical person who would help her relatives and not reason. Even if Li Yuanzhu had someone she liked, if it conflicted with her righteousness, she would probably cut off her feelings. This was also the difference between the 2 top women in the world. Furthermore, the research was only to observe her exchange of energy, blood flow, and condense her heaven-grade weapon. It wouldn't be too offensive to her. Therefore, Rinpoche wasn't worried. After getting everyone to leave, Rinpoche calculated the Empress's schedule and figured that she should be back soon. The 60,000 mountains were vast, but if the Empress returned alone, she could travel directly through the air, which would be extremely fast. Just as he expected, news of the Empress's appearance in Aching Valley came back the next day. It really wasn't easy to find a place in the 60,000 mountains. Otherwise, the Empress would have arrived 10 days ago. This was after discovering the plane in the sky and following the direction for a few days before finding it. Aching Valley was not big. It was just an outpost. The most important things were the airport and a few warehouses. The Empress, who was dressed in red, appeared. She looked around and headed straight for the warehouse. Moments later, all the people guarding Qing Valley were shocked. After the Empress chased everyone away, she carried 2 bottles of wine out of the warehouse. After downing a bottle of wine, she let out a satisfied sigh of relief. Her face was full of satisfaction. He then used the radio to send a message to Renbaqian. "Prepare the wine pool for me. I want to see it when I return." Upon hearing the Empress's cold voice, a smile appeared on Renbaqian's face. "As you wish." He immediately returned to Earth and tried his best to bring back more than 1,000 caddies of ergot. Long ago, he had imposed a ban on alcohol, especially on the use of grain to brew wine. As for fruit wine, he turned a blind eye to it. After all, it couldn't be completely banned. For example, Erhua's base camp, Shanhui restaurant, and several brothels in the city all had alcohol. 3 days later, the Empress boarded a plane that shook like a tractor as it rose into the sky. She rested her chin on one hand and sat by the window. She wasn't really affected by the turbulence. She looked at the huge beasts roaring in the forest in the distance and pondered whether she should get someone to clean up the surroundings. Previously, this route had been cleared. The beasts in the 60,000 mountains all had a sense of territory. After the powerful beasts in an area were cleared, other beasts would migrate over after a period of time. As a result, they had to be cleaned up from time to time. It seemed like there was no end to them. Because of this, more than half of the troops from the Protectorate of the South were involved. Before the plane reached a high altitude, there was a small accident. An iron-winged rock barged into the flight path of the plane and seemed to treat it as a toy. It chased after it for a while and planned to pounce on it. The archers on the plane shot a few arrows at it but couldn't chase it away. The arrows bounced off the gray feathers on its body, which made the rock a little angry. It looked as if it was being harassed by a few flies. With a cruel look in its eyes, it kept following the plane from below. If it wasn't for the fact that the plane was flying at a higher altitude than it would have caught up in time. After another 3 days, Renbaqian returned to the harem after the court session. He tidied himself up and informed Erhua that he would return to the palace after school before heading out of the city with the ministers. After waiting for 2 hours, the plane finally landed at the airport. The Empress was the first to jump down from the plane and saw Renbaqian opening his arms. The Empress hugged him and smelled that familiar scent. She then bit his shoulder hard and heard him groan in pain. She then raised her head and sneered, "I'll deal with you when I get back." Her ears were very sharp. When she turned around, she could still hear Renbaqian muttering, "Are you born in the year of the dog?" She almost turned around and gave him another bite. "Don't stand on ceremony." The Empress nodded slightly at everyone. During the days when she wasn't around, everyone had done a good job in assisting Renbaqian. She was quite satisfied. "Let's talk after we get back to the palace," the Empress said faintly. "Yes." Everyone stole glances at the Empress curiously. They didn't know what level the Empress was at now and could only feel that her aura was as unfathomable as the sea. There were a few limousines and various vehicles outside. Nowadays, Dayo didn't only have tractors and trucks. There were limousines and off-road vehicles, but they weren't officially released. Basically, Renbaqian obtained them from the laboratory and gave them to everyone as a reward. These things looked precious, but they were all experimental models. Using them as a reward would be beneficial and not costly. This is not bad. The Empress sat in a limousine. When she saw Renbaqian take out the iced fruit wine from the refrigerator, her eyes immediately lit up. "Is my wine pool ready?" "Of course, how can I be careless with your Majesty's instructions?" Renbaqian hugged the Empress and received a long, suffocating kiss in response. Then she bit his lips so hard that he almost tore off a piece of skin. "You are indeed born in the year of the dog." Renbaqian was exasperated. This was why he couldn't beat her. "I heard that you are addicted to the brothel and neglected to discipline Erhua?" The Empress looked at him from the corner of her eyes. "Who said that? I will beat him to death." Renbaqian was so angry that he almost died. How could she slander him like that? Angry out of humiliation? You are really bold. The Empress laughed and made Renbaqian panic. Angry out of humiliation? I have been working hard for several years. Even if I don't get any credit, I still put in a lot of effort. How dare someone slander me? Ren Baqin said angrily. Ah. The Empress laughed meaningfully. Chapter 1179. Queen Mother. Erhua was surprised to see the Empress in the palace. Although they were mother and daughter, they had not seen each other for many years and inevitably felt a little unfamiliar. The Empress left when Erhua was 4 or 5 years old and had been gone for 5 or 6 years. Although they occasionally contacted each other through the radio, this didn't change the unfamiliarity brought about by distance. The Empress looked at Erhua in a daze. She had grown up so quickly. That sense of unfamiliarity wasn't only felt by Erhua, but also by her. Erhua had grown up. When she left, she was only 7 or 8 years old, but she now looked like a slender and elegant young lady. She wore a long blue dress, looked like the Empress, had quick-witted eyes, and was a cardinal heaven expert. You've grown up. Come closer and let me take a look. The Empress looked relaxed and smiled. Queen Mother. Erhua called out again. You look good, the Empress said gently. Of course, I'm doing well. It's just that I haven't seen you for a long time. Erhua was as honest as he could be. Let's talk while we eat. I want to hear about what happened to you all these years. The family of 3 sat in front of the hot pot and sighed. It had been a long time since they last had such a day. At the table, the Empress asked Erhua about her in detail, such as her school and studies. At first, Erhua was honest, but he soon reverted to his old ways and was straightforward. Queen Mother, let me toast to you. Let's have another toast, Queen Mother. Of course, I'm very powerful. I'm a princess. Who dares to bully me? It's me who bullies others. I have a lot of friends who give me a lot of treasures. My favorite is a pair of fire sparrows. They have a nice chirp and can catch fire. Later, I wanted to see if I could roast them. It's strange that they can catch fire, but they can still be roasted. They taste pretty good, but they're too small. I recently met a monk who is fun, drinks a lot, and has a good alcohol tolerance. He doesn't make a fuss after drinking too much, doesn't fight, and doesn't strip dance. He just cries at the slightest provocation. School isn't fun. There are too many courses, but you can learn a lot. I've been very interested in revolutionary history recently, but it's different. Isn't that the fate of the Queen Mother? We're the biggest landlord. You'll beat me to death. Father doesn't go to brothels often, right? I can stay there for at most 5 days a week. At least there's a weekend. That's much better than me. Other people go to class 5 days a week, 7 days at most. I go to class 10 days a week. I've already broken the record in human history. Silence. Abrupt silence was the worst thing at the dining table. It was extremely awkward. Rinpoche glanced at the Empress and saw that she was smiling coldly. Then he looked at Honeysuckle, his eyes rolling. This bastard did it on purpose. Speak properly. Rinpoche gritted his teeth. How could that be? I was just saying. No, I was just a kid talking nonsense. Heh. The Empress curled her lips into a sneaky smile. His gaze was as sharp as a knife, capable of slicing people into pieces. The Empress didn't argue too much with Rinpoche. After all, she had many information channels in the imperial court. Rinpoche often went to brothels, but he only went there to drink. He didn't do anything else and behaved himself after drinking. Usually he was too busy. Going to the brothel to listen to music and drink, then going to the big bathing pool to take a bath and have a massage was considered his pastime. Naturally, the Empress wouldn't go overboard. Otherwise, before Honeysuckle could stab Rinpoche, she would hang him up and beat him up first. Rinpoche looked at the eye mark on the Empress's arm and clicked his tongue. God? He felt that this thing might be a powerful existence from the foreign races and was a little interested. From the sound of it, it seemed like a curse. It could actually form such a mark on the other party's body. He didn't know the specific effect, but no matter what it was, this mark definitely had a positioning function. It was just like marking a target on the head of a boss in a game so that his teammates would know to attack him together. Let's go back and give it a try. Renbachien didn't know if this thing would disappear when he returned. Only God knew how this thing worked. With a twist of space, Renbachien pulled the Empress and Honeysuckle back to Earth. Looking at the sky, it was early in the morning. The time is just right. You can go to school now. Renbachien patted Honeysuckle's back with such strength that would have killed someone else. Let's see if it's still there. Renbachien grabbed the Empress's arm and saw that the eye-like mark had disappeared. Sure enough, the mark was affected after being separated by a world. Renbachien could almost hear the other party's voice saying, "The other party is not in the service area." In the Lansong territory, in a forest that wasn't considered dense, countless beasts were frantically fleeing. The ground was shaking and the trees were swaying. It could be felt even from hundreds of kilometers away. 5 gigantic beasts of disaster that were as huge as mountains were constantly moving forward. Tall trees that were 20 to 30 meters tall were like straws in front of them and couldn't stop them at all. They were smashed, crushed, or deeply embedded in the soil. Wherever the 5 beasts passed, there was only a mess left. Behind the 5 ferocious beasts was a team of ferocious beasts and earth spirits that was far away. In the sky, dozens of flying beasts were circling above. They either swooped down or grabbed their fleeing prey. An earth spirit wearing a crown and a string of jewel-like ornaments sat on the head of a giant beast of disaster and rubbed a black crystal in his hand. It's been 5 days and there's still no response from this road sign. Where is the enemy marked by God? Is he dead or? He felt that the latter was the most likely. No one could hide from God's gaze. However, he didn't tell them immediately. Instead, he kept moving forward along the original route. This wasn't very useful since the road sign only pointed in one direction and wouldn't change unless it was within 500 kilometers. He didn't know if the other party was originally 500 kilometers or 10,000 kilometers away. Let's wait for another 2 days. If there's still no response, we can confirm that the other party is dead. Imperial Prince Su, there's a tribe of the four-eyed race 50 kilometers away. A huge winged flying snake landed on the same level as the Calamity Beast's head. The Earth Spirit clan members on the ground immediately knew about it. Let them prepare food or let them become food themselves. The Earth Spirit called Imperial Prince Su instructed. The four-eyed race was considered one of the stronger races among the weaker races. However, the Earth Spirit clan was considered above average even among the middle-level clans. In addition, the Earth Spirit clan had a god, which elevated the status of the Earth Spirit clan. It was only second to the 36 powerful clans and the strongest clans among the middle-level clans. As for treating the weaker races as food, it wasn't a big deal in his eyes. The Earth Spirit wasn't picky about food. A day later, near the ruins of the four-eyed race's tribe, Imperial Prince Su was about to give the order to return when he suddenly discovered that the road sign was reacting and trembling slightly. Chapter 1180. It's still here. It seems like this thing isn't so easy to deal with. Renbachien frowned slightly when he saw the pattern reappear on the Empress's arm. If it's still here, it's better for your Majesty to keep it in the palace. Although it's fine now, it can't be useless. If it explodes one day, it won't be a small matter and may even endanger your Majesty's safety. It's not that troublesome. It's still effective, but it's a little weaker. The Empress was relatively calm. Renbachien looked carefully and couldn't see which part was weaker. However, he still trusted the Empress's words. In this case, we'll travel to the 2 places more often and see what happens. That's right. The Empress nodded and changed the topic. Where's my wine pool? The Empress had always been obsessed with the legendary wine pool and carnal pleasures. If an emperor didn't have a wine pool and carnal pleasures, he would be embarrassed to say that he had done it before. It's already been prepared for your Majesty. Renbachien smiled. I'll get someone to pour the wine in. 2 hours later, the 2 of them arrived at a hall. In the hall, there was a pool that was 20 meters long and wide. It was half filled with liquid. As soon as they entered the hall, a strong aroma of wine rushed into their nostrils and could intoxicate them. A wine pool. The Empress's face was full of joy. There should be trees planted next to the pool, candy trees? The Empress pointed to the surroundings of the pool. Good. I don't know what they did to actually block the sight of the gods. But so what? After all, how can humans compare to the gods? Imperial Prince Su noticed the movement of the road sign and sneered. Let's go. Let them suffer the wrath of the black sky god. 3 days later, the road sign didn't respond again. The road sign responded again. The road sign didn't respond again. The road sign responded again. The road sign didn't respond again. The road sign again. Imperial Prince Su's hair stood on end. For more than a month, he was always on the verge of a violent rage. The team had been moving in the direction indicated, but what made him furious was that the road sign seemed to be getting harder and harder to track. Until one day, the road sign couldn't find the other party's position. This made Imperial Prince Su's eyes hazy. There was no doubt that the other party was still alive. However, he didn't know how they did it. They actually blocked the sight of the gods, and even the gods couldn't find them. Give up? Absolutely not. The other party's blasphemy towards the black sky god had to be cleansed with blood. But to continue? Who knew if the other party was thousands of miles away or tens of thousands of miles away? It was impossible for them to kill everyone along the way. Looks like it will disappear after one more time. Rinpoche rolled up the Empress's sleeve and looked at the faint mark. If he didn't know what it originally looked like, he wouldn't be able to tell. All that was left was a faint outline. He didn't expect that such a mark could be worn away by traveling back and forth through space. It was reasonable, but unexpected. At the very least, he knew another additional function of traveling through space. Yes, I'll be leaving after it's gone, the Empress replied. It's a bit urgent. Time doesn't wait for me. Although the crystals were effective, they were more useful to the warriors of Great Xia. They were more suitable for them to meditate and exchange elemental energy with their divine souls. To be of use to the Aboriginals, I need to stay in a space with dense yuan qi for a long period of time. I can't always stay in a quiet room. The Empress shook her head. I also want to see what it's like on the first heaven after I break through the longevity heaven. According to the message left by the Emperor is the level of strength in the longevity heaven realm. Those foreign race masters must be at this level as well. Only by reaching this level can we know how powerful they are. Your Majesty, how long will it take to reach that level? Rinpoche couldn't help but ask. The Empress could be said to be favored by heaven and earth, and her talent was unparalleled. She was a cardinal heaven expert at the age of 20 and broke through to the intermediate level of longevity heaven when she was just over 30. Now, she had already reached the advanced level and could be considered the #1 human in the world. This kind of talent had never been recorded in the thousands of years of history. Thousands of years ago, when the human race was still in the Lansong region, there weren't many people who could compare to the Empress. Moreover, the Empress had the hack machine to level up. However, without the help of predecessors, Rinpoche wasn't sure how long it would take for the Empress to take that step. On one hand, he was looking forward to it, but on the other hand, he was a little worried, which was why he asked this question. After the Empress took that step, the future should be much safer. I will definitely take that step within 10 years. The Empress said resolutely. Good. Rinpoche smiled. 10 years. He didn't know how many more years she could drag on. The most important thing now was to drag on. The longer she dragged on, the more advantageous it would be for the human race. If she dragged on until the human race got out of the warship, even if there were dozens or hundreds of foreign race masters, they could just directly attack them. The Empress returned for more than a month before leaving. She left in a hurry and didn't even explore the existence in the belly of Mount Luchui. It was a race against time now. Huh? There's news of cheese-eating? Rinpoche was a little surprised. Most of the time, he had forgotten that he had such a brother-in-law. He had been looking for traces of the late emperor for more than 10 years, and even Honeysuckle was almost 11 years old. A door! Rinpoche was a little surprised. Yes, it's said to be a door with a layer of water on it. We can't see what's on the other side of the door. More than 10 people went in, and no one came back from the other side. We don't know what's on the other side of the door, the radio reported. Renbachyan walked around the ground a few times. There were too many strange things in this world, such as the thousands of races in the Lansong land, the red moon in the sky, and now another door. It didn't seem too surprising. What about Chi Ziding? He also went in, and there were 3 cardinal heaven experts. Pass down the order that no one is allowed to go in again. Be on guard outside, and I will send someone later, Renbachyan immediately ordered. Yes, but those people might not listen. The other party said hesitantly. Renbachyan knew who he was talking about. Chi Ziding was accompanied by a group of ancient race cardinal heaven experts that he had recruited. There were more than 20 of them. If these people wanted to go in, they couldn't be stopped. If they want to die, don't stop them. If they haven't gone in by the time my people arrive, it means that they don't dare to go in. What else is there to say? Renbachyan said coldly. Understood. If anyone returns or there are any movements, send a message back immediately. Renbachyan turned off the radio and pondered for a moment. Although this was what he said, Chi Ziding had disappeared after reaching the other side of the door. He still had to send someone to suppress them. However, where did that door lead to? It would be great if there were satellites now. By throwing a probe at the other side of the door, the satellites would naturally be able to receive the signal and know the specific situation. Now that the wall of the 2 worlds was the focus, he wouldn't tell the Empress about this matter so that she wouldn't worry. Renbachyan made up his mind. He didn't care whether Chi Ziding and the others were dead or alive. He only cared about the impact of this matter and where that door led to. Chapter 1181. Horned Dragon Galaxy, 4-leaf grass planet. There were several large cities on this planet that had a population of more than 1 million. Thunder Light City was one of them. When the sun rose and was still hanging in the sky, the people in the city had already started their daily lives. What's that in the sky? What is it? Someone cried out in alarm. As if it was contagious, most people on the street looked up at the sky. Then, this contagious action spread from one street to another until it covered half of the city. Countless thunder barbarians looked up at the object that was reflecting a metallic luster in the sky. It's so noisy outside. What happened? A deep voice was heard from the palace in Thunder Light City. King, there's something in the sky, a female thunder barbarian said with a surprised expression. In the sky? Something? The deep voice was heard again. I'm sorry, King. The female apologized at first, then explained, there's something floating in the sky. It's at least a few thousand meters high. I can still see it clearly, so it should be very big. It looks like a metal plate. If the people on Earth heard this, they would probably laugh for a long time. The spaceship stopped right above Thunder Light City, so it looked like a metal plate from below. It could be considered a different world version of the blind trying to figure out an elephant. Oh! The owner of the deep voice finally appeared. It was a tall thunder barbarian who was more than 2.5 meters tall. There was a diamond-shaped scale on his forehead that had a weak electric light jumping on it. At that moment, 8,000 meters in the sky. Those natives must be shocked. Oh mother, I see God. A white pilot looked at the aliens on the screen and laughed. Although his tone wasn't pleasant, the people around him didn't object to it. This was a sense of superiority and pride from a higher civilization. At least Earth was a civilization that had walked out of the planet. When faced with such an ignorant and backward civilization, it was natural for them to have such a mentality. Of course, the premise was that their powerful individual combat power was ignored. If both parties were on the same plane, no one would doubt that they would be rubbed against the ground by those 2 horned aliens. This was the conclusion that came from observing their battles and individual combat over the past few years. It's out. The one with the strongest energy reaction. The entire observation room was filled with the sound of people inhaling. The screen clearly displayed the opponent's vitality, 112336. An average adult's vitality was only around 10, and a well-trained elite soldier's vitality was only around 30. 112336 was equivalent to the vitality of 7,000 ordinary people. It could be considered a self-propelled battleship. If Renbachyan were here, he would have a better understanding of the other party's blood and chi value. One had to know that the blood chi of an Earth embryo realm expert was between 1,000 to 1,200. Most spirit wheel experts had a blood chi value of less than 3,000, and cardinal heaven experts only had a blood chi value of around 5,000. According to this growth curve, the experts of the heaven and earth domain would not have more than 10,000 blood chi. Martial artists who had just entered the longevity heaven only had a blood chi value of less than 20,000. The further one went, the greater the difference in physical strength between the ancient race martial art practitioners and the spirit refinement martial art practitioners. But his opponent had directly raised it to 6 digits. This was a qualitative difference. This number was simply terrifying. When are we going to send someone down to communicate with them? Someone asked, swallowing a mouthful of saliva. It was a man in a military uniform. Give them some time to think. After 24 hours, send a spaceship and a robot down. Have you finished analyzing their language? Another man asked. Yes, we have already put in surveillance equipment a year ago. After the analysis of 2 linguists and the photon computer, they can now communicate with each other. Then there's no problem. None of the foreign races below tried to shoot down the spaceship with long-range weapons, such as arrows. The foreign race individual with the highest blood chi value stood outside for only a few minutes before returning to the largest building in the city. The building was shrouded in a kind of energy. Only the blood and chi value could be detected, but the specific value couldn't be detected. After 24 hours, the sun in this world was just past noon. After 24 hours, the Thunder Barbarians in the city below were still looking up at the steel plate in the sky from time to time as if they were afraid that it would fall. A small plane flew out of the spaceship. It was 10 meters long and 7 meters wide. It looked more like a diamond-shaped box in all 8 directions. The biggest feature of this Shuttle 17 was that it had a nozzle at the bottom and 4 small propellers at the top. It didn't need a runway to take off and land. It was more appropriate to call it an aircraft. When the plane first flew out, it didn't attract much attention. As the plane descended, the foreign races in the city immediately became restless. Look, there's something flying over. What is it? It doesn't look like a beast. Is there someone on it? In the palace. King, there's something flying down from the iron plate. And that dull voice only responded faintly. What should we do? Wait, let's see what it is. For any race, an alien visitor was something that required imagination. The more backward a race was, the less understanding a race had of outer space, the more it was like this. King, that thing stopped. It stopped 100 meters above the rain platform. This time, before the dull voice replied, an electronic voice with a strange tone came from outside the palace. King of the Thunder Barbarians, I'm an envoy from a foreign land. We came here to communicate with you. I don't know if you're willing to. The reason why it was strange was that the last 2 words of the Thunder Barbarians were extremely forceful, like steel, so when they spoke, they gave people a feeling that they were very imposing. However, this electronic voice was in line with the habits of the Earthlings, so the voice sounded a little weak. That thing spoke? The female Thunder Barbarian in the palace was shocked. After the electronic voice said it once, it repeated itself. After a few seconds of silence, the dull voice laughed. Ha, interesting. I haven't encountered such an interesting thing in a long time. Okay, don't just stand there, let our guests in. The rain platform was a 3-story platform outside the palace. Each floor was 3 meters high. At this time, several guards were looking at the sky near the rain platform with lightning surging in their eyes. It wasn't until the female Thunder Barbarian came out and said a few words that the guards stood aside. Come down, the king invites you in. The female Thunder Barbarian said to the sky. Everyone was surprised to see the plane land on the side. The side opened, and a woman who was similar to the Thunder Barbarian walked out. She had no horns, no lightning in her body, and no blood could be felt from her. That's right, it was a female robot. Under normal circumstances, it was easier for the other party to be on guard against a female. Especially according to the observation on Earth, the aesthetic standards of the Thunder Barbarian tribe were quite similar to those on Earth. This robot was made based on the aesthetic standards of the Thunder Barbarian tribe. What are you? The female Thunder Barbarian raised her eyebrows and looked at the robot in front of her. She could clearly feel that the other party was not a living thing. It's not very polite to say that. The robot pursed her lips and smiled, saluting with the etiquette of the Thunder Barbarian tribe. Come with me. She didn't feel any dangerous aura from the other party, so the female Thunder Barbarian directly invited it. As for checking the weapon, there was no such requirement at all. As the most powerful king of the Thunder Barbarian tribe, he naturally didn't care about this kind of thing. First, set a small goal, such as 1 second. Remember, book house. Chapter 1182. We've entered the hall. The signal isn't affected. A joyful voice came from the spaceship. Apart from that, it was even quieter in the spaceship. Everyone was looking at the image on the screen, trying to catch any sound. Other than the spaceship staff, there were linguists, sociologists, and negotiation experts. Earth had made a lot of preparations for this meeting. According to some people, it was the beginning of a new chapter in history. This was the first contact between humans and an extraterrestrial civilization. It could be said to be a historical event. No one would be careless. As the robot entered the hall, the residence of the civilization's ruler was finally reflected in the eyes of the people on Earth. In the eyes of many people, a lot of things could be determined from a person's residence. Although it was an alien, it was better than not having any clues. The hall was spacious and simple, with black and blue as the main colors. At the top was not a seat, but a cushion that looked like a futon. A tall figure was sitting there with his legs crossed. Other than that, there was the female Thunder Barbarian in front of him. Neither of them had luxurious decorations on them. They were even inferior to the Thunder Barbarians outside. However, the pressure from their bodies was far beyond any life form they had ever seen. Simple, determined, tough. This was the first impression of the people on Earth. It's a pleasure to meet you, King of the Thunder Barbarians. I'm an emissary from Earth. You can call me Zero. The robot saluted. Puppet? Something shameful. But I'm still willing to give you a chance to talk. The tall figure said. Tell me first. What are you guys? Where's Earth? What's your purpose? You can call us humans just like how you call yourselves the Thunder Barbarians. In fact, we're all carbon-based life forms. Although there are slight differences in appearance, there's not much difference in essence. Earth is another planet outside this one. We crossed the distant starry sky to come here with the friendship of humans. Friendship? The tall figure let out a soft laugh. Yes, friendship. The boundless starry sky is our goal. The starry sky is vast, and most of the planets have no life. Discovering and coming here is a surprise for both our races. The robot's words were said after many experts had discussed them. They tried their best to be as pretentious as possible so that the other party would not look down on them. After all, Earth had already walked out of the planet. They still had some confidence in dealing with the native alien races. However, he couldn't brag too much, lest the other party would see through him in the future and feel that he had been deceived. Thus, he tried to make his words as complete as possible. This was also based on the situation of the Thunder Barbarians. From what he had learned, the people of this race believed in martial strength. Their physical strength was strong, and their personalities were straightforward. They hated being lied to. Then, why are you looking for me? Naturally, it's to establish a connection between both sides. Did you discover this world by accident? Where is your world? What do you want? I hate having something on my head. Do you know why I didn't take it down? The tall figure finished asking what he wanted to ask and suddenly changed the topic. Shoot it down? Many people on the spaceship laughed. Shooting down a spaceship from 10,000 meters in the sky with his bare hands? This joke is very funny. Primitive, barbaric, ignorant. Such labels were hung on the king of the Thunder Barbarians. Because I want to see what will happen. The voice of the tall figure didn't change much, but it carried a hint of thunder that sounded like the silence before. The expressions of the sociologists on the spaceship changed slightly. Was this the rhythm of a sudden change in attitude? Peaceful communication is built on powerful strength. There's a saying that goes, reading can make me talk to idiots calmly, and fists can make idiots talk to me calmly. Maybe we should show our strength. This kind of primitive, backward race can't understand the greatness and power of technology. They have too little knowledge, so they believe in the pressure of fists more. I don't think he'll be so unwise, right? Someone said. After all, communication between both sides was extremely beneficial to both sides. Honestly speaking, who would reject communication from another planet? If it was him, he would definitely not reject it. He believed that no one would be able to reject it. For a civilization that could walk out of a planet, even a little bit of technology would be enough for them to upgrade for several generations. Most people agreed with this statement. If it was Earth in their shoes, their first concern would be how to further communicate with the other party, exchanging technology, materials, minerals, and so on. They would find a way to get technology from the other party that could allow their civilization to transition. Secondly, they would want to get something that could allow their technology to advance, or something that could allow them to live a better life. Even if the other party didn't know much, as the king of a race, he wouldn't be too short-sighted, right? Maybe you're very powerful, but for us who can travel through space, your strength is still at the level of a living creature, the robot said. Hee-hee-ha. The tall figure suddenly laughed in a low voice. I've said it before, I hate things above my head, not even birds. And I also hate people who are sneaky and don't even dare to show their faces. If you come and greet me honestly, maybe I'll spend more time talking to you. The people on the spaceship who heard this had a strange expression. Greet him honestly. It was like a primitive man who was being pointed at by a gun and roaring, "You should just greet me honestly." However, the next moment, everyone couldn't laugh anymore. The tall figure didn't make any movements, but an electric current suddenly flowed into the robot's body. In a short moment, all the electronic parts were destroyed, and the screen on the spaceship went black. Although it's exquisite, a puppet is a puppet. The tall figure didn't even look at the robot and flashed out of the hall. Suddenly, a bow completely made of lightning appeared in his hand. Is he trying to shoot us down? Someone sneered. Everyone's face was a little angry. They didn't expect that they would fail to make contact with the king of a primitive race. The other party was simply unreasonable. The gap between the two parties was obvious, but the other party actually dared to do this? If it was someone else, even if they had some ideas, they would probably feign civility first, right? As expected, we should learn our lesson this time. Next time, we should show our strength first and let them know who's boss. There's a high-energy reaction below. There's a high-energy reaction below. The spaceship's alarm suddenly sounded. However, everyone wasn't too worried. After all, this was a spaceship that could travel through space at an altitude of 10,000 meters. What everyone was more interested in was the bow in the other party's hand that was made of pure lightning. Scan it and see how the bow is made. We might have discovered a big secret, someone said excitedly. Everyone subconsciously felt that this bow made of lightning was some kind of special mineral. If they could excavate it, it might be of great use. A purple ray of light streaked across half the sky. Make sure to observe and record, someone else said. However, the next moment, the ray of light hit the spaceship and instantly broke through the outer shell of the spaceship. The powerful electric current instantly destroyed all the instruments on the spaceship. Even the people in the spaceship died in an instant. Looking at the falling spaceship, the tall figure wrapped in lightning suddenly leaped up. He first lifted the spaceship up a few inches, then smashed through the bottom armor of the spaceship. Boom! After all, it was a spaceship that was traveling through space. Its defense was excellent, and with this cushion, the spaceship didn't suffer too much damage. King! Seeing the tall figure walk out from a hole on the side of the spaceship, the surrounding people cheered. King! The female Thunder Barbarian walked to the side. The tall figure nodded slightly. Find the best craftsmen and scholars in the city and see if they can research anything. Then he sneered. Weak rabbits actually want to be on equal footing with me? Do they think that just because they can fly, I can't do anything to them? How does the king know that they are weak? They don't even dare to show their faces. Why would the strong need to use such dishonest methods? But if they attack en masse, if they could attack en masse, it wouldn't be just one spaceship that came today. It wasn't easy for them to come here. Moreover, they were able to shoot down their spaceship so easily, which confirmed this point. They are just weak people with some strange skills. Chapter 1183. I have something to say. I thought that there was nothing that crossed the line in this book. However, I was reported by someone and met with a crackdown. I first 404 before reviewing it. I don't know if it was a certain reader or a certain author who reported me. I blocked a lot of haters and even retaliated. I understand that some people hate me. In Dragon Sky, I also scolded some people who didn't know anything and just blindly spouted nonsense. It's natural for people to hate me. I don't know who did it, so I'll say it all at once. Maybe they thought that they had won and thought that they could make the authors they didn't like unhappy. In fact, it only created an environment in which everyone in the online literature industry felt insecure. In the end, they didn't dare to write anything. I really don't know what the current online literature industry will look like. I can be sure that readers who like to read will not like to see this. As for some authors, they aren't that hateful, but they are quite pitiful. They can't do anything else and their minds aren't on the right path. They can only be disgusting like this. Anyway, I haven't seen any successful authors who report this or that every day. In the online literature industry, only strength is looked at and nothing else. If you want to produce results, you have to write your own book well. Even if you drag others down, you won't be able to come up. That's all. Recently, I've been writing other things for fun. I didn't have any manuscripts. I thought that it would take a few more days before I could release them. After I finished writing, I would go and update my novel. Chapter 1184. Thunder Barbarian King? The spaceship was shot down? Let me watch the video first. Rinpochen was surprised to hear the news. This time, the news came back very quickly. It had only been 10 days in Dayo and 1 month on Earth. After all, when they first came into contact, the 3 spaceships in the Horn Dragon Star sector maintained constant communication. Everything that happened from start to end was clearly seen by the other 2 spaceships. Okay, just remember not to spread it. Yang Sen's face, which was getting rounder by the day, looked like a greasy middle-aged man, but was actually an old man, was floating in the air. With a smile on his face, he circulated the news internally and left it to Yang Sen to contact Rinpochen. After all, in this aspect, Yang Sen's vision was higher than everyone else's. He was an expert among experts. After witnessing the strength of the aliens, Rinpochen's status in the system was raised by a plus sign. His wife, the empress who killed without batting an eye but was so beautiful that she made people speechless, was raised by 3 plus signs. Rinpochen shrank back and said, "Stay away from the camera, at least show the upper half of your body." Half of his body was more comfortable than a head floating in the air. Furthermore, this head was too big. Okay. The greasy head of the Messier 87 department, Yang Sen, shrank back and immediately became half of his body. Rinpochen opened the video sent by Yang Sen and even recorded the words of the pilot as if there was a voiceover. Those natives must be shocked. Oh mother, I saw God. The flamboyant voice in the voiceover didn't surprise Rinpochen too much. This should be how a high-level civilization faced a low-level civilization. A long-lost scene flashed across his mind. Thinking back to when he transmigrated with a bowl of noodles and was almost beheaded, he felt a wave of sourness in his heart and almost cried. However, when he saw the blood and chi value of 112336, Rinpochen's face turned solemn. He knew what the blood and chi value of the Empress was. 35,000. The Empress was at the intermediate level of longevity heaven and had been training outside the wall of 2 worlds for almost 3 years. Now, she was close to the advanced level of longevity heaven and only had a blood and chi value of 35,000. The other party's blood and chi value was 3 times that of the Empress's. Judging from the growth curve of his vitality value, he was probably no longer at the peak of the longevity heaven. At the very least, he had already taken a step there. Since the human emperor was dead, his body had been refined into a strange existence. All of his blood essence had shrunk into a ball near his heart, making it impossible to measure his vitality. Therefore, it was difficult for him to estimate the strength of those who had reached that level. However, Thunder Barbaric King's strength had already caused his heart to tighten. However, judging from the growth curve, he had at most 1 foot taken that step. In that case, how powerful would an existence who had truly reached that level be? As he thought about it, he watched the video and listened to everything that happened next with a thoughtful look in his eyes. Yang Sun didn't rush Rinpochen. Instead, he brewed a cup of wolfberry tea suitable for his age at the other end of the screen. Even though Rinpochen was already aware of this matter, he was still somewhat fearful of the might of this arrow and remained silent for a long time. "What do you think? What do you think?" Yang Sun finally opened his mouth after a long time. "You can't evaluate these Thunder Barbaric Kings with the thinking of Earthlings." Rinpochen pointed out the first problem. Rather than looking for those sociologists, you might as well look for 2 ruffians from a backward region. They know better than anyone that the fist is the boss. If you don't show your strength, it's useless no matter what you say. Not everyone cares about the exchange of benefits, let alone the alien races. After staying in Dayo for so many years, he knew this way of thinking too well. As the king of a race, Thunder Barbaric King was inhumanly powerful, had a higher opinion of himself, was more stubborn, and was harder to convince. Similarly, they valued martial strength more. Rinpochen could almost understand the other party's thinking. If they needed anything, they could just snatch it. Otherwise, they would work hard to train and strive to cross the starry sky with their body. They might not necessarily understand the dangers of the starry sky or the vacuum. In their opinion, since they could come over, they could go over. As long as their body was as strong as steel. Rinpochen dared to say that after the spacecraft crashed, the other party would definitely test the strength of the steel. In his opinion, it was just that he hadn't flown high enough. "We didn't expect the other party to be so direct. We also considered what you said and came up with a variety of plans. However, the other party's reaction was still beyond our expectations. But it's still human thinking." Rinpochen ended this topic with 1 sentence. "What's the height?" 13,000 meters. There was no obvious weakening before hitting the spacecraft. The other party's arrow can reach at least a distance of more than 20,000 meters. Rinpochen was in a bad mood at this point. The stronger the other party is, the more powerful the enemy will be. Unless the distance is pulled to a safe enough position, even a spacecraft isn't a match for him, Rinpochen pointed out. A spacecraft that could fly in space was powerful in some aspects, but it was weak in terms of combat power. What about a nuclear bomb? The premise is that you can hit him. A powerful existence that has reached this level is extremely sensitive to danger and has a very strong body. This includes laser weapons. Without a certain density, it's very difficult to hit the other party. Naturally, they can't cause damage or even cause fatal damage. I don't recommend you to be enemies with him now. Rinpochen sighed. In fact, he hoped that Earth and the other party would fight to the death. Only in this way would Earth rack their brains to create more powerful weapons. War was one of the driving forces for the advancement of weapons and technology. This was also very beneficial to him. However, he couldn't say that. He is already looking for our traces. Although we are separated by a continent, after he finishes searching the area occupied by the Thunder Barbarians, he might send people to search further away. Yang Sin knew a lot of things, which surprised Rinpochen. As the head of the Messier 87 department, he actually knew so much. What are the plans of the higher-ups now? Rinpochen suddenly asked. Yang Sin came to ask Rinpochen because he wanted to get some information from Rinpochen's opinion. As for the specific plans, it wasn't something that Rinpochen could control. How would I know about such things? Yang Sin laughed directly. I don't recommend making a second contact with the other party or immediately becoming enemies with him. I suggest that we seize the opportunity to develop weapons that can injure and kill such a powerful individual, Rinpoche said directly. Do you have any other opinions? For example, what level of strength can this person reach? Yongsan asked. The value of blood and qi was just a number, and they needed to have a more intuitive understanding. The other party should have the ability to walk in the air at a height of no less than 2,000 meters, Rinpoche judged based on the Empress's situation. Anything else? Do you think I'm a god? What can I see with just these few things? Rinpoche spread his hands and asked. Yang Sen's greasy old face was starting to look a little unpleasant to the eye. He really didn't know too many things. Even the Empress hadn't reached this stage, so how much could he know? Furthermore, he wasn't in a good mood. The strength of these foreign races was indeed terrifying. In addition, I suggest that you don't try to use nuclear bombs. Although it can destroy a large number of ordinary Thunder Barbarians, it's very difficult to kill such an existence. After that, it will attract the most intense counterattack from the other party. I don't think that an ocean can stop such an existence. Moreover, there isn't just one such existence on planet Four-Leaf Grass. There are at least 3 of them. There are only 3 spaceships on Earth now. Oh, there are only 2 left. What can we do? Let's build the spaceships first. Only when there are enough spaceships will we have the capital to think about other things. By the way, their power of thunder and lightning should be related to their thunder pool. You guys better pay attention. Chapter 1185. Although he was concerned about the follow-up of the four-leaf clover planet, he knew that there wouldn't be any results in a short period of time. The 2 small spaceships would not be able to do anything to the other party. Just like what he said, at most, he would throw a few nuclear bombs down to flatten the capital and kill countless Thunder Barbarians. Then, the Thunder Barbarian King would be injured but not killed, and he would retaliate crazily. As for the possibility of Thunder Barbaric King taking a nuclear bomb head-on, if this really happened, he might really consider smearing the nuclear bombs with honey and packing them in a gift box as a gift to the foreign race's heavenly lords. After returning to Daeyo, 3 months passed in a flash. The 3 ironclad ships that Chao Zhong was on had also crossed the Qin nation and ventured thousands of miles into the 60,000 mountains. They had also built a stronghold to serve as a supply depot. Now, they were preparing for the next exploration. It was estimated that it would take at least 3 months. There were still some fishermen coming and going along the coastline near the Chuyun Mansion and the Qin Nation. If they found a guide, they could avoid a lot of danger. However, no one had ever set foot in the 60,000 mountains before. At that time, it would be up to them to explore it bit by bit. The date of the martial arts contest had been set. It would be held in 3 months. Those under the age of 24 would be divided into 2 groups, 15 to 19 years old and 20 to 24 years old. The purpose of the contest was to select martial arts geniuses with potential. For this reason, a special group had been set up to serve the martial arts competition. The person in charge was an expert from the Temple of Heaven. The venue is set outside Wang capital city. There are a total of 5 arenas, 3 of which are the main arenas and will be used in rotation. The construction of the arenas will increase the number of steel bars, and the concrete will have a strength of 80. Rinpoche looked at the blueprint of the arena in his hand and listened to Tu Hong, the head of the Ministry of Works, who was newly established in the Ministry of Works. Speaking of which, Rinpoche and Tu Hong had a grudge against each other. Back then, the 2 of them had sparred several times. However, the current Tu Hong was much more well-behaved. Let's do it this way. Report the expenses and withdraw them from the Ministry of Revenue. Rinpoche immediately approved it. However, the next day, the naive, stingy, miserly, and seemingly menopausal Tu Wan directly said in the imperial court, "The Ministry of Revenue doesn't have any money left. The salary for 3 months has just been distributed, and the rest has been spent on the 60,000 mountains and the Wall of 2 Realms. If you don't believe me, you can go to the National Treasury and rummage through it. Even a mouse will be crying when it goes in." Even if Tu Hong was her biological brother, there was no way he could ask for money. Rinpoche was silent for a while before saying in a relaxed manner, "This isn't difficult. We can pay the 6th knitting factory a sum of money to advertise during the entire competition. Also, ask the big families in the Yun Nation if they want to advertise at the competition." Advertisement? Let's advertise it to the public. It's the section that introduces the products on the Black Bamboo Academy's newspaper. After hearing Rinpoche's explanation, everyone immediately understood. Is this useful? Of course. But the 6th knitting factory produces underwear and sports vests, right? Tractors and trucks are understandable, but what's the point of advertising these things? Rinpoche had a smile on his face. It's just underwear and a knitted vest. Don't you always tear your clothes when you fight? Especially after you use weapons, it's rather unsightly. The 6th knitting factory has developed a kind of cotton woven with green spider silk. It's quite tough and not easy to damage, so it's not exposed during a fight. Everyone was stunned. Thinking about it, this thing did seem to be useful. Men were easy to deal with. At worst, they could just raise their swords and fight, but women seemed to be more concerned about this aspect. This was especially true for the warriors from the Yun Nation and Great Xia. Rinpoche smiled in his heart. Putting aside the group of big shots in the court who would get drunk and start running around naked, the warriors still cared about their reputation. If it was a battle of life and death, they wouldn't care so much. However, in the arena, who would be willing to expose themselves in a battle of weapons? The advertising fee from the 6th knitting factory was definitely worth it. As for the chambers of commerce and families from the Yun Nation, they weren't without foresight. Those who sold weapons and medicine also had a demand for this. After the morning court session, Rinpoche stayed in the laboratory for the entire afternoon to check on the progress of various projects. He returned to the palace in the evening. "Where's the princess?" Rinpoche asked as soon as he returned. In Fengyang Palace Hall. Exenge's bespectacled face, which was expressionless most of the time except during electric shocks, looked a little strange. What happened? Rinpoche might not have noticed if there was something wrong with other people's expressions. However, it was too obvious on Exenge's face. "Li Yuanzhu, Lin Yu, and Xing Rua are also there," Exenge said in a cold voice. "How did they get together?" Rinpoche was slightly stunned. "Go on patrol. I'll go take a look." After giving some instructions, Rinpoche walked toward Fengyang Palace Hall. As soon as he entered the courtyard, he heard the sound of a zither coming from the main hall. Rinpoche was even more surprised. Erhua rarely looked for musicians in the palace. In addition, the identities of the other 3 people made Rinpoche even more curious about what they were doing. However, when he walked to the front of the hall, he vaguely heard a song coming from inside. The melody was a little familiar. "We met again at a wedding banquet." A beautiful woman was at the side. The candlelight swayed red. The lights were twinkling, reflecting a pair of picturesque faces. Like a gentle old dream on a cardamom branch. "I don't know the opposite party." Suddenly my thoughts churned. "I see your clothes are still white, but your expression is a little cold." The voice was like the cry of a phoenix, extremely melodious, and lingered in the air. People couldn't help but stop in their tracks to avoid disturbing the person who was singing. "It sounds familiar," Rinpoche thought to himself. He slowed down and took a few steps forward before he could see the situation in the hall clearly. He saw that the woman who was sitting with her eyes squinted and whose voice was like the sound of nature was actually Lin Yu. Li Yuanzhu was sitting cross-legged behind her and playing the zither. Not far from her was Erhua, who was sitting behind a drum. The song gradually stopped, but the mournful sound of the flute continued. Rinpoche's expression also became strange. The scene in front of him was something that he had never expected. The world's top expert, the ethereal Li Yuanzhu, Lin Yu, the troublemaker Erhua, and the superficial monk, Xing Rua, were actually singing together? Not to mention their strength, they couldn't possibly go together with their identities. Li Yuanzhu and Lin Yu should be doing research in the laboratory, right? Rinpoche suddenly remembered that he didn't see them in the laboratory in the afternoon. He didn't pay much attention to it at first since he needed to rest while being researched. He didn't expect them to be together. The song was very familiar, but he couldn't remember the name as it had been a long time ago. Your Highness is here. Li Yuanzhu looked up and greeted him with a smile. Arhat. Xing Ruo held a bone flute in one hand and put his palms together with the other. He was dressed in white and looked rather ethereal. Lin Yu was still squinting and disconnected from the internet. Erhua jumped up from behind the drum and shouted, Father! What's going on? Ren Baqian was puzzled. Father, we have formed a band. Sister Lin Yu is the lead singer. Her singing is good, right? Sister Li is the zither player, I'm the drummer, and monk Xing Ruo is the bone flute and harmonizer. Erhua's expression was written all over his face. I'm amazing, right? I'm amazing, right? Why aren't you praising me? If you don't praise me, I'll beat your chest with my little fists. Band? Ren Baqian was a little confused. These people were going to form a band together? This didn't seem right. Yes. We are going to form a rock band, but we are still getting used to it. Isn't Sister Lin Yu's singing nice? We will definitely be popular. Erhua said cheerfully. Li Yuanzhu nodded slightly and smiled. Lin Yu continued to disconnect from the internet. Xing Ruo smiled without saying anything and muttered, Amit ba. Ren Baqian looked at the four of them, then at them again and then again. He had a stomach full of complaints but didn't know where to start. A Taoist nun, a monk, a princess, a mysterious internet expert, and a rock band. How did these dozens of words come together? Also, the previous chapter was about studying extraterrestrial experts. How did this chapter jump to a rock band? After a while, Ren Baqian suddenly slapped his thigh and looked at Li Yuanzhu with a strange expression. He remembered the name of this song. A Taoist nun friend of mine, do you know the name of this song, Zhenrenli? Post-air, share. Chapter 1186. I didn't expect that I would have the opportunity to participate in a competition in Dayo in this lifetime. Su Meijun sat in front of the table and sighed softly. It was unknown when Great Xia's position as the overlord fell in just a few years, but Dayo rose with an unstoppable momentum. This made every martial artist of Great Xia feel very complicated. Great Xia was clearly the center of the world. But that train is really comfortable, and the trucks are not bad either. They are fast and much more comfortable than horse carriages. Also, their roads are really good. Every year, the imperial court's laborers repair, and many people die. I wonder how many people are buried under such roads, a young girl at the side commented. Dayo's train was very comfortable, Dayo's trucks were very comfortable, and Dayo's roads were very good. But Dayo must have lost a lot of people and buried piles of bones. Those corrupt officials didn't care about human lives at all. In short, their contributions will be remembered for generations to come, Su Meijun concluded. Oh, it's really as evil as you say. An old man at the table beside laughed after listening from the beginning to the end. Oh, what did you say? Su Meijun turned around and saw a stout old man in a silk robe. He was served by a manservant beside him. There are professionals in charge of repairing roads. There are definitely people who die. Birth, aging, illness, and death are inevitable. But there aren't many people who die. It would be too exaggerated to see bones everywhere. There's a group of people who specialize in repairing roads. They know how to do it, what materials to use, what speed to do it, and how to do it safely. After all, they specialize in this, and this is called professionalism. Just like how an ordinary person might injure himself with a knife. If it were the two of you, would it be possible? Similarly, the technicians in the construction team aren't incompetent either. The old man laughed and looked at the two of them as if they were two silly deer. If he wasn't afraid that the other party would draw a knife and chop him, he might have spoken his mind. Indeed, the two of them didn't see the meaning in his eyes. If they did, they would probably draw their knives and chop him. Su Meijun thought about it and felt that what he said made sense. She became curious. Construction team? They specialize in repairing roads and nothing else? Are they supported by the Ministry of Works? Yes and no. Are they from Great Xia? It might not be the same as the situation in your world. It's a long story to explain in detail. Anyway, they get paid. Although it's a bit tough, it's still better than farming for others. At least they earn more money, the old man said with a smile and gave a simple explanation. Su Meiju nodded and looked down. It was a lively scene. The Yun nation had been conquered by Dayo. Not only were the people living in misery, but it was also a scene of orderly prosperity. Moreover, the commoner's sense of belonging was very strong. The two of them had only said a few words, and someone had already taken the initiative to explain. Senior Marshal Brother, is that the Anata saber? The girl felt bored after listening for a while. She turned her head to look at the street and suddenly exclaimed. He actually came as well. Su Meijuan's eyes narrowed. She turned around and saw a handsome young man with a cold expression in the crowd. He was followed by a few women. What caught people's attention the most was the large saber on his back. The saber was 2 meters long, and the saber itself took up half of it. There were 3 slanted ridges on the back of the saber, which could be used to lock weapons. Seeing this weapon, she knew the identity of the young man. He was the most famous young expert in Great Xia in the past 2 years, Jiang Zhong, the Anata saber. Jiang Zhong seemed to have noticed her gaze. He raised his head and glanced at her. His eyes were empty, as if there was nothing in them. There was no person, no light, and nothing could be reflected in his eyes. His gaze swept past Su Meijuan's face without stopping at all, as if she was just an insignificant person. He's so arrogant. He doesn't even care about Senior Marshal Brother. Before Su Meijun could speak, the girl was furious. In the next second, the Anata blade Jiang Zhong staggered on the ground. He tripped over something and almost fell to the ground, causing the girl's anger to turn into laughter. Serves him right. Su Meijun smiled and shook her head. It said that the Anata saber practices his saber technique in his mind all the time and doesn't care about anything else. His purity is indeed amazing and enviable. It sounds simple, but how many people can be like him? There are a lot of experts participating this time. But Senior Marshal Brother will definitely be fine. The girl said. The appearance of this yuan crystal alarmed too many people. Speaking of experts, what kind of experts are we? How many experts were there 10 years ago? Li Fu, Li Yuanzhu, Qi Zixiao, Jiang Zixi, Ma Hongyu, Su Gongso, and the others are experts. It's just that most of the top 100 experts in the world are missing. Their disciples aren't aware of them, and even Qi Zixiao rarely appears. Now, only Li Yuanzhu stands alone in this world, while Hong Wu and a few other protectors guard the borders. Su Meijun sighed softly in a voice that only the two of them could hear. Not to mention the peak of the spirit will experts, if he could watch them fight, he might be able to find an opportunity to break through. However, after that group of experts disappeared 100 years ago, there was a gap in the world of Great Xia. Nowadays, if an expert wanted to advance further, there wasn't even a reference other than the descriptions in the secret manuals. This was one of the reasons for the decline of the world of Great Xia. Although the outstanding young experts who came this time were here for the Yuan crystal, it wasn't as if they didn't have the intention of inquiring about it. For the next few days, Su Meijun stayed in Wangjing City. From time to time, she would meet familiar young experts to chat or discuss martial arts. During this period, she would also look for opportunities to inquire about those legendary experts, but to no avail. During this period, some other things happened. For example, within half a month, 30 experts died in Wang capital city, and all of them were killed by swords. No one knew who the killer was. All they knew was that the killer's sword was very fast, and the people who died under his sword included left-hand sword East Ning, who was famous for his fast swords, and quick saber Chiohe. The others were not nobodies either. They were all famous young experts. Another example was that there was a young girl in the city who looked to be about 14 or 15 years old and loved to watch the excitement. Whenever someone was competing, she would hold a melon in one hand and a melon in the other. She would squat at the side as if she was watching a monkey show and would sometimes even give a few pointers. Then, when she was watching a show, she had a conflict with a certain young expert. With a few punches and kicks, She pressed that young expert and his group of friends to the ground and even forced them to call her daddy. The other onlookers were immediately shocked. At this moment, everyone knew that she was also a great expert, and one who was several stories tall. Oh? Killer ghost? Ren Bachien chuckled as if he had heard a joke. In reply to your highness, these are all false rumors spread by ignorant people, Jin Kunming, the commander of the rearguard commandery, said with a laugh. After laughing, he changed his tone and said, although it's a false rumor, this person's sword is indeed very fast and strong. If we let him continue to cause trouble, it won't be easy to clean up. Everyone is already panicking now. Have you found out his identity? Ren Bachien asked. Yes, his name is Li Dai. His origin is unknown, and he's about 20 years old. He's a man of few words and seems to rarely talk to others. He's a little strange when talking to people. He doesn't have any inheritance and seems to have jumped out of the deep mountains and forests. It's suspected that he obtained a secret manual from an ancient tomb. Well, you've done a good job investigating, Ren Bachien praised. It's my duty. His strength. He's at the Earth embryo stage, just one step away from entering the path of heaven. Those who died in his hands were also at the Earth embryo stage, but they weren't as fast as his sword. Ren Bachien thought for a while and said, well, Yu Qing is watching the show from Wangjing, right? Let her do it. If she can keep them alive, then let them stay. If she can't, then kill them, Ren Bachien said after some thought. Under her strong request, Hua and her Taoist nun friend, Li Yuanzhu, her monk friend, Xing Ruo, and her good friend, Lin Yu, who was offline, formed a band to perform as the opening performance for the martial arts competition. According to her, this was an opportunity for their band to become famous. Therefore, they found an excuse to go to Wangjing City early to watch the show. First, set a small goal, such as 1 second. Chapter 1187. That man killer ghost? Kill him? Actually, he's quite fun. Honeysuckle swung her legs as she sat on the window frame. Her mind was filled with the image of the young man who almost bit his tongue after he was knocked into by her on purpose. He was indeed quite fun. Oh, I know. Actually, you don't have to kill him. You just have to beat him into submission, right? Honeysuckle nodded vigorously. I know. Where is he? All right, you guys lead the way. Honeysuckle's body flipped backward and fell down. She spun in the air and landed steadily on the ground. At night in Wangjing, the wind carried the smell of seafood. It mixed with the smell of spices and cosmetics to form a unique smell that made the people of the Yun nation proud. At least, Honeysuckle felt hungry just by smelling it. Sir, a bowl of wonton please. Honeysuckle threw down 2 coins and suddenly thought of something. She turned to look at the tall and thin man behind her and asked, do you want some? The man shook his head. That's why you couldn't get promoted after working in the rearguard commandery for so many years. Honeysuckle looked disgusted. Her tone implied that he deserved to be promoted, which made the man laugh bitterly. Especially when the 11-year-old princess said that. It was a little hurtful. Another bowl. Another bowl. The Pole waited at the side without saying a word, as if he was really a Pole. After finishing 3 bowls of wonton, Honeysuckle felt a little better. The rain also fell like a curtain of pearls. Your Highness. Someone hurried over from a distance and handed over a transparent plastic umbrella with a flower pattern printed on it. It was a popular model for the past 2 years. I want oiled paper, Honeysuckle ordered. Handmade is the best. The person was a little stunned. He didn't know where Her Highness got this theory from. How could handmade things be as exquisite as factory-made things? Handmade has soul. Forget it, you guys don't understand anyway. Honeysuckle waved her hand disinterestedly and stood under the shed of the wonton stall. A few minutes later, she took the paper umbrella over her head and walked on the long street. She remembered the time when she went to Great Xia with her father and mother. The family of 3 walked on the street like this. It was also a paper umbrella. This was one of the few scenes that left a deep impression on her. He let his thoughts wander. The Mother Empress came back and stayed for a month before heading south again. She had been beaten 15 times this month, an average of once every 2 days. It hurt so much. She's already such a big girl, yet you still have the heart to beat her? Is he his biological son? Your Highness, that brat has left the inn. It seems like he's going to make a move tonight. Oh, Honeysuckle said casually. Honeysuckle was not in a hurry, and the people who came were not in a hurry either. At most, it would just be 1 or 2 more martial artists dying. The telephone pole was like a moving telephone pole. If he hadn't turned around, he wouldn't have known that someone was following him. Li Dai looked like a shy young man. His appearance was not outstanding, and his clothes were extremely simple, giving off a rustic vibe. But such a young man is the man-killer fiend that has been causing a lot of anxiety in Wangjing recently. At night, Su Meijun was sitting in her room when she suddenly heard the sound of a stone smashing against the window frame. Who? Su Meijun jumped out of the window and saw a figure standing on top of the wall. He was wearing a green robe and his hair was simply tied behind his head. He held a sword in his hand. Or more accurately, a sharpened piece of iron. It was so simple that it couldn't be any simpler. There wasn't even a blade, only a rope tied around the end of the sword. Sword technique is very good. A slightly shy person spat out each word with a slight stutter. Draw your sword, Udai. I live. Su Meijun originally thought it was a young martial artist who came to ask for advice. After all, the other party made it hard for people to raise their guard. But as soon as he heard this, his expression changed. Man-killer fiend? Draw your sword. Li Dai repeated. Su Meijun's expression changed a few times. As a confident martial artist, he naturally wouldn't think that he was weaker than others. But of the people who died under the hands of the man-killer fiend, he was very familiar with 2 of them, and they weren't any weaker than him. You don't draw your sword, Li Dai didn't know if it took too much effort to speak, but halfway through his sentence, he simply clasped his hands and bowed. A sword light flashed. Such a fast sword. Such a fast movement technique. Su Meijun only had enough time to think this. He instinctively unsheathed his sword and used his well-practiced sword technique. Ding! Su Meijun felt a weight on his hand, but the opponent's strength wasn't that great. But in the next second, a sword light drew a semicircle and slashed towards his neck. Soundless and colorless. Su Meijun twisted the sword in his hand and stabbed towards the opponent's chest without a sound. His first move was an ultimate technique. When the sword is drawn, it uses opposite forces and the sound of breaking air to cancel each other out. Unknowingly, the opponent has already been stabbed. It can kill the opponent soundless and colorless, hence its name. Especially in a night battle, its power is even greater. Often, the opponent doesn't even notice when the sword has already arrived. But the sword in Li Dai's hand was even faster. It spun in the air and flicked the rainwater towards Su Meijun's face. Not good. Just as Su Meijun had this thought, the rainwater was already in front of him. He could only wave his sleeves to block it and quickly retreat. If this rainwater hit his face, he might become unrecognizable and even affect his eyes. But as he blocked the rainwater, Su Meijun felt a pain in his chest. It's faster than the sword just now. Su Meijun suddenly realized. When Li Dai attacked, there was a ruthlessness that was the complete opposite of his usual shyness. His eyes were full of focus and devotion. One sword left a 3-inch long wound on Su Meijun's chest. The next sword went straight for Su Meijun's neck. It was almost like a shadow, not giving Su Meijun any chance to escape. Su Meijun blocked 2 more swords in a rather awkward manner. Seeing that the 3rd sword was already in front of her, she couldn't dodge it anymore. She cried in her heart, "It's over." She couldn't understand why her opponent was so strong when they were both at the peak of the Earth embryo stage. But at this moment, a red, straight, 7-inch long, oddly shaped hidden weapon flew towards her with a sound of breaking air. Taking advantage of the time when Li Dai cut off the hidden weapon, Su Meijun rolled backwards in an extremely awkward manner and dodged this fatal sword. Both of them looked in the direction where the brick came from and saw a girl in blue holding an umbrella on the wall. She was sitting there, swinging her legs. She extended her other hand to the side, and a tall, thin man handed her a red hidden weapon. Not far away, another man in black was tearing down the wall. He broke it into pieces and placed them next to the tall, thin man. One was tearing down the wall, and the other was handing bricks. The scene looked quite harmonious. It's you. Li Dai's gaze froze. He didn't know when the other party had appeared. It's me. Honeysuckle held the brick in one hand and the umbrella in the other. It's you. Li Dai's gaze froze. He didn't know when the other party had appeared. It's me. Honeysuckle held the brick in one hand and the umbrella in the other. I want to stop you. Honeysuckle seemed to think it was very funny. He mimicked Li Dai's words, making his face flush. A sword light cut across the night sky. Li Dai didn't have any protective feelings for the fairer sex. Honeysuckle seemed to be startled, and his body fell backward. In the next second, the whole wall flew into the air. While still in the air, it turned into countless bricks and pieces of cement, smashing toward Li Dai's face. Even Li Dai was caught off guard by this move. The water from the sword dance couldn't get in, and all the bricks and cement were swept away. You're scaring me. Honeysuckle's figure appeared from behind the brick wall. Her face was adorable, and she seemed to be gnashing her teeth. This made Li Dai a little speechless. It was the first time he had encountered such a situation since he left the mountain, and he didn't know how to deal with it. Yes, you can't hold back against an enemy. Li Dai said something that sounded like an explanation, and then his expression turned serious. If you weren't so cute, I would have killed you with a slap, Honeysuckle said angrily. You want to fight? I'll beat you until you call me daddy today. Give me the knife. Honeysuckle stretched out his left hand, and another man in black appeared in the night. He respectfully handed over a 2-meter-long xianhua axe. Judging by the size of the axe, it must be at least 50 kilograms. This isn't a knife, Li Dai said stubbornly, which made Honeysuckle's eyes widen. Even Su Meijun was somewhat speechless. The youth who had almost taken her life was actually such an honest fellow. Come. I'll let you make 3 moves first, Honeysuckle said carelessly with the axe on his back. Li Dai's expression turned serious. He could feel that the girl in front of him was very dangerous, so he didn't say anything more. He moved 4 to 5 meters away. The sword light was extremely beautiful, and it was dazzling. However, in the next second, the axe chopped down with the power to split the sky and the earth. The drizzle and the night sky were all split apart by this axe. Li Dai's figure flashed, and a palm-wide mark appeared on the ground where he was standing and the ground 5 to 6 meters behind him. Even the soil was turned up. It was so powerful even before they made contact. One could imagine what would have happened if he hadn't dodged it. 3. Li Dai's expression became even more serious, and he stuttered even more. I lied to you. Didn't anyone tell you that girls lie? Honeysuckle smiled slyly and winked. If it weren't for this scene, if it weren't for the giant axe, if it weren't for the mark on the ground, Su Meijun's heartbeat would have quickened as she looked at this elf-like girl with a sly smile. Li Dai opened his mouth, and he seemed even more clumsy. At this moment, the inn that had been alerted was completely lit up. Senior brother? A young girl looked through Su Meijun's window and immediately saw the people in the courtyard. She flipped over and jumped down. Senior brother, what's this? Su Meijun held out her hand to stop her from speaking. Honeysuckle swung his axe, and a white arc seemed to be visible in the air. Countless raindrops were smashed toward Li Dai. This was exactly the same as Li Dai's bullet rain. However, the difference in power was like heaven and earth. When the raindrops hit the ground and walls, there was even a rustling sound. Su Meijun was horrified to see countless tiny dots on the ground and walls. Spirit wheel, it must be a spirit wheel expert. Su Meijun exclaimed in her heart. Such a young spirit wheel expert. She started practicing martial arts in her mother's womb? Who is she? While Su Meijun was exclaiming in her heart, Honeysuckle had already swung her axe at Li Dai. Li Dai simply didn't dare to take it head-on. He moved his body slightly to the side and stabbed his sword 3 times in a row. The speed was so fast that even Honeysuckle had to face it head-on. However, there was, after all, a huge realm difference between them. Although Honeysuckle didn't have much combat experience, she had experienced life and death battles. Coupled with her innate talent for combat, she completely suppressed Li Dai in a few moves. Su Meijun felt that this scene was somewhat familiar. She laughed bitterly in her heart. An expert who almost took her life was like a puppet in the hands of this girl. After more than 10 moves, Li Dai couldn't avoid it. With a ding sound, the sword in his hand flew into the air. Honeysuckle's axe landed firmly on Li Dai's neck. She raised her chin slightly and said arrogantly, "Call me Daddy. A newcomer's new book? I can pass through a language book?" Those who were interested could go and take a look. Chapter 1188. Li Dai didn't call him father after all. Honeysuckle didn't make things difficult for him. He threw the shenflower axe aside, sending the person who caught it flying a few meters away. "Come with me." Honeysuckle glanced at Li Dai with disdain. You want me?" Li Dai stuttered and didn't know what to say. He couldn't beat him, so he suddenly didn't know what to do. After all, Li Dai was a rather innocent young man. "You're so weak that you can't even speak clearly. What can I ask you to do? I still need someone to serve the dishes and pour the water. You're the one." Honeysuckle was even more disgusted. Although he said that, Honeysuckle still felt that this child was quite fun. Simple, reserved, and stuttering. However, when he picked up the sword, he became a completely different person. Su Meijun really wanted to ask, "Is there a shortage of people to serve tea? Can I do it?" One had to know that all the spirit wheel experts had gone missing, and there wasn't anyone he could ask for advice from. Otherwise, he might have already stepped onto the path to heaven. "Don't even think about running. If you do, I'll break your legs. I'll do what I say. I'm fierce. I have hundreds of lackeys. Do you hear me?" Even after the blue-clothed girl and the man-killer fiend disappeared into the rain, Su Meijun was still in a daze. The man-killer fiend that's causing so much panic shouldn't appear again, right? Tonight was really dangerous. If it weren't for the blue-clothed girl, he probably wouldn't be able to see the sun tomorrow. Oh right, I forgot to ask the girl's name. It was just that the young girl came and left quickly. She was in such a hurry that he didn't have a chance to interrupt. "Senior Marshal Brother, you've changed." The young girl looked at Su Meijun's silent posture as he stared at the night sky for a long time. "He's already gone, why are you still looking? Don't talk nonsense, he's an expert." Su Meijun waved her hand. "Is it a woman?" "Yes, beautiful, right? It seems like he's already gone. Are you still watching?" Su Meijun pursed her lips and felt a headache coming on. "Forget it, let's go back. By the way, who is that person?" The junior marshal sister had just remembered that there was another person. Man-killer fiend. Who? Man-killer fiends? The junior sister suddenly raised her voice. "I almost couldn't see the sun for a while. It's raining, there won't be any sun in a while. Be serious." Su Meijun didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The man-killer fiends came for senior brother? The girl was a bit scared. "That's why I almost couldn't see the sun for a while. There won't be any sun in a while. It's going to rain, senior marshal brother." Junior marshal sister emphasized again. Su Meijun was speechless. She looked at her junior sister, who was so honest that she had a heart attack, and then thought of that sly girl. This was reality. For the next few days, Su Meijun would occasionally stroll around the city. Only then did she find out that another martial artist was attacked that night. The man-killer fiend incident was still causing a lot of anxiety. Fortunately, through Su Meijun, the news of the man-killer fiend's capture also spread, as well as a young girl in a blue dress who liked to eat melon seeds. Su Meijun didn't even care about the martial arts competition anymore. He wasn't even a match for a man-killer fiend. The world was so big, and there might be many unknown experts. And that girl, Su Meijun, strolled around the city to see if he had the chance to meet that girl. On one hand, he wanted to thank her, and on the other hand, he wanted to ask her for advice. He also wanted to find out the mystery of the disappearance of those spirit will experts. With that girl's strength and mysteriousness, she might know something. What made him feel regretful was that every time there was a martial arts competition, that girl would always appear at the side to eat melon seeds. However, these days, he would go whenever there was a competition, but he never saw any trace of that girl. It was as if she disappeared after that night. However, he didn't give up. After all, the martial arts competition was about to start, and that girl might appear. Senior? You really don't want to participate in the martial arts competition? The girl looked regretful, but there was also some hope in her expression, as if she was hoping that Su Meijun would change his mind. Su Meijun shook his head and tidied up his clothes in front of the mirror. The mirrors in Daeyo were really good. They were clear, and the figures in the mirror didn't have the slightest distortion. They also didn't turn black as easily as bronze mirrors. More importantly, it was very difficult to polish a bronze mirror to such a large size. In Daeyo, such mirrors were even available in inns, but in Great Xia, they were very expensive. Let's go. Su Meijun brought his junior out of the inn and went straight out of the city. On the way, he saw many practitioners who were traveling the same way as them. Most of them were riding tractors. The practitioners from Great Xia liked to try this kind of transportation, which was rather rare in Great Xia. It was indeed much more comfortable than a carriage. One by one, the young heroes stood in the back of the tractor, facing the wind. 5 kilometers south of Wangjing City, the original farmland had been transformed into an open arena. There were 9 arenas, 3 big and 6 small. The 3 big arenas were the main arenas, and the 6 small arenas were used for the preliminaries. In addition, there were layers of spectator seats around the arena, which could accommodate 3,000 people. It seemed like a lot. After all, there were only a few hundred practitioners from Great Xia, and the number of practitioners from the Yun nation who came to participate was about the same. However, with the addition of the family and friends of many of the participating practitioners, some young people who came to broaden their horizons, and some onlookers, these spectator seats were far from enough. However, the officials in charge of this matter had already made preparations. In addition to adding a large number of spectator seats, they would also install a large screen outside the arena to broadcast the battles inside. Su Meijun and his junior got a seat with the invitation letter. They turned around and saw some of the more famous young practitioners around them. Many of them had interacted with them before, and they nodded to each other in greeting. At 8:30 in the morning, the Minister of War, Qin Chuan, went up to the center of the arena to give a speech. His voice was transmitted through the speakers in the arena. Although I see you as a bunch of bugs that I can crush with 1 foot, Her Highness is willing to give you a chance. In that case, show me your strength. Qin Chuan's merciless words made many of them angry, and they wanted to draw their swords and fight to the death. However, looking at the thousands of soldiers around them and the hundreds of winged cavalry warriors who were looking at them provocatively, they could only suppress their anger. Get him to come down. Ren Baqian, who was in the spectator stand, said to the guard beside him with a black face. This guy's opening speech was already like this? Ren Baqian didn't spend so much effort to select talents with potential just to turn them into his enemies. Qin Chuan didn't mind being called off the stage by Ren Baqian. The next person to go on stage was the MC that Ren Baqian had already arranged. After a provocative speech and explaining the schedule and the relevant prizes, the MC said in a high-pitched voice, "Next, let's welcome the lead band to perform." Many practitioners in the spectator stands were dumbfounded. Lead band? Band? What did that mean? They knew about performing on stage, however, as soon as they stood on the arena, there was an uproar from all around. Su Meijun was also surprised to see the girl in blue on the stage. Although she had expected her to appear here, she didn't expect her to appear in such a capacity. What was even more surprising was the identities of the other people. Li Yuanzhu and Lin Yu. Many people knew who these 2 people were. They were the two most powerful people in the martial arts world and were extremely beautiful. No one would have thought that such people would actually perform on stage. It was simply unbelievable. Many people recalled the rumors that Li Yuanzhu was related to Dayo, and from the looks of it, it seemed to be true. In addition to Li Yuanzhu, Lin Yu, and the girl in blue, there were two other men. One of them was bald, and the other made Su Meijuan's pupils shrink. It was the man-killer ghost. The man-killer ghost looked embarrassed and at a loss as he waited for Erhua and the others to adjust their instruments. Erhua played the drums, Li Yuanzhu played the zither, Lin Yu played the flute, and Xing Ruo played the bone flute. When the messy music gradually became unified and formed a melody, Erhua whispered, "Don't mess it up, or I'll beat you to death." When the drumbeat seemed to beat on everyone's hearts, the man-killer ghost closed his eyes, gritted his teeth, and roared as if he had used all his strength. The great river flows eastward, the stars in the sky join the Big Dipper. He actually didn't stutter. Erhua nodded gently as a form of praise. Not bad, he had performed well after practicing for the past 2 days. Lin Yu and Xing Ruo couldn't sing this song so boldly. In the end, they managed to catch the man-killer ghost. Surprisingly, he didn't stutter as badly when he sang as when he spoke. After a week of passive resistance from Li Dai, Erhua suppressed him with force, and threatening to strip him naked and hang him in front of his house, he finally finished practicing this song. Outside the stage, Rinpochen almost vomited blood in his private room. Erhua had prepared for this opening for a long time? *CK. He turned to look at the others nearby and found that they were listening with great interest. Especially that old fool, Qin Chuan. Although this song was a little strange, it was still quite to his liking. In fact, this song was quite good to the ears of many martial artists, and it even diluted their shock at Li Yuanzhu's appearance on stage in this situation. It sounded quite sentimental. Especially the lyrics, "Roar when you see injustice, strike when it's time to strike," were very much to their liking. Many people felt that this song was what they were thinking. After a few minutes, the song ended, and the man-killer ghost jumped off the stage as if he was running for his life. Erhua ignored him with a grin, took the microphone, and said, "Next, I present the song, Tears Behind Prison Bars to everyone sitting here." Rinpochen was speechless. Listening to the familiar melody, Rinpochen was shocked. However, after thinking about it carefully, this song was really King appropriate. Chapter 1189. The song, Tears Behind Prison Bars, made many martial artists hold their swords in their hands and look around in confusion. What am I doing? The lead band became famous with a single song. Many people wanted to curse at him. If it wasn't for the sake of the two seniors, Li Yuanzhu and Lin Yu. If it wasn't for the fact that they couldn't defeat him, at noon, Su Meijun heard about the girl's identity from others. The princess of Dayo Chiyuqing. After all, some of the families and chambers of commerce in the Yun nation would go to the imperial capital from time to time. Many people had seen this princess who liked to drink at the Shanhui house. The identity of Erhua spread from those people to the martial artists of the Yun nation and finally reached the ears of the martial artists of Great Xia. This made many martial artists feel the malice of the imperial court. Su Meijun was surprised to hear the news. What surprised him even more was that she was only 11 years old. Su Meijun suddenly felt a little fearful and a heavy sense of guilt when she thought about the other party's age a few days ago. After debating for an hour whether or not she was a pervert, Su Meijun went to the martial arts competition organizing team. "I was delayed due to some matters. Is it too late to register now? This is my invitation letter." Those who have an invitation letter can enter the seated group, but you definitely can't enter now. You'll have to fight from the preliminary round. If you agree, there's still an empty spot. The organizing team could be said to be the people who understood His Highness's thoughts the best. In the face of such a famous martial artist, they also adhered to the spirit of special treatment and gave him a way out. Then let's start from the preliminary round. Su Meijun made a prompt decision. "Senior brother, didn't you say that you wouldn't participate?" "I changed my mind," Su Meijun said. After knowing the girl's identity, he felt that it would be very difficult to get in touch with her and ask her questions. However, if he obtained a good ranking in the martial arts conference, he might have a chance to get in touch with her. Father, did I sing well? Erhua scurried in front of Rinpochen and used the word scurried at lightning speed. Did you sing it? Rinpochen chuckled. I was the one who formed the band, so of course I get the credit, Honeysuckle grumbled. Not bad. Rinpochen nodded slightly and changed his tone. You've been out long enough. Come back with me? I want to stay for a few more days to see how they fight. Besides, this is also a chance to learn from others, isn't it? Honeysuckle quickly found an excuse. It's up to you, but you can't delay your homework. I've already brought your homework and exam papers. Find a time to finish them and have someone send them back. Rinpochen gave the imperial bodyguard a look, and the imperial bodyguard immediately understood what he meant. He took out over 50 kilograms of homework and test papers and slammed them on the table. Honeysuckle felt his heart shatter. He wasn't her biological son, definitely not. Do you want me to go back with you? Honeysuckle asked. The homework can be reduced by half. Rinpochen had a look of approval on his face. Forget it. If I die, then I die. I'm not going back. Honeysuckle shouted and disappeared without a trace. You stay here and remember to watch the princess finish her task. Rinpochen gave the imperial bodyguard an arduous task. The guard's forehead was covered in sweat. Your Highness, what about your safety? Should he let Cho Chi and Zhuotai stay? The two of them can fight better than you alone. Rinpochen patted the guard's shoulder and entrusted him with an important task. By the way, keep an eye on Li Dai and other people who appear near the princess. The princess is young and doesn't know the dangers of the world. If anything goes wrong, kill them first. If there's a mistake, don't let it go. Understood? All right. Rinpochen nodded and walked away. He had come all the way here just to watch the opening ceremony and leave without even showing his face. As for the rest of the competition, someone would naturally report it to him. If he wanted to watch it, he could see it in the capital. After Rinpochen left, Honeysuckle resumed his days of eating melon seeds, watching the competition, and strolling around with his new subordinates. At night, he gritted his teeth and curled up in his room to do his homework. As the competition progressed, some outstanding martial artists gradually became known to the world. Even Rinpochen had heard of them. For example, Great Xiazanata sword Jiang Zhong, Light Rain sword Su Meijun, the Mei sisters from the Yun Nation, and Xiong Shuetai and Sher Anan from the Aboriginals. Are you going to challenge him? Honeysuckle asked as he sat in the private room and watched Jiang Zhong use his sword to form a net that enveloped his opponent. Li Dai sat in his chair and straightened his body. Is there a grudge? Honeysuckle asked curiously. Li Dai scratched his head and said, He is the most famous. Honeysuckle's curiosity immediately turned into disgust. And then? He's very, very powerful. He sharpens his sword, accumulates his power, and wins in one battle. This was a way for great Xia martial artists to hone their mental strength. If they won the last battle, their mental strength would be at its peak, allowing them to break through the Earth embryo stage and enter the path to heaven. However, this required the life of an expert to be the cornerstone, be it the opponent or oneself. Honeysuckle thought about it and commented, boring. Li Dai was so angry that his face turned red. At the same time, a young man looked at the green on the distant horizon and was ecstatic. I see green, I see green. Really? When the young men and women behind him heard this, their exhausted bodies suddenly glowed with new strength. It's right in front of us. We can definitely reach it tonight. The first young man had 2 short horns on his head and was very tall. If we walk fast, we can get out of here tonight, Lin Dong, who had been following behind them, suddenly said. That's great. This team finally walked out of the area outside the wall of 2 realms that was filled with poisonous fire. Late that night, the exhausted young men and women stepped on the grass and fell down. Lin Dong opened his arms and felt the yuan qi that was rushing toward him. It was even denser than at the Wall of Two Realms. In his eyes, the whole world seemed to be different. The solid bottleneck in his body began to loosen, which made Lin Dong a little excited. As long as he found a place to cultivate, he believed that he would be able to break through in no time. Leader, this place? Su Jiaojia, who had been standing behind Lin Dong, was pleasantly surprised. Not a bad place. Lin Dong looked into the distance with his deep eyes. It was as if he was embracing the world with his hands. Thinking of the heavy responsibility on his shoulders, he finally gave up the idea of finding a place to cultivate. No matter what, he had to let these foreign races gain a foothold among the foreign races first. Let them eat the soul-cleansing pill first, Lin Dong ordered. After walking for a few more days, the group finally saw the field. This place was very close to the Grey Thorn Tribe's village. Lei Li, Lu Sheng, the two of you go to the Grey Thorn Tribe's village. Contact me once every 3 days through the radio and report the situation. Lin Dong said to a young thunder barbarian and a young girl with a snake tail. Yes. The two nodded. Whether it is you or them, you are all the children of the Ajati matriarch. You must let them know the Ajati matriarch's real name. No matter what, do not clash with them. They are just ignorant and do not know the great existence. The reason why I want you to go is to let them understand these principles. Understood. The two said loudly, their eyes filled with fervor. Go. Lin Dong nodded and led the rest of the group to go their separate ways. They still had to go to other places. The 6 of them could first gain a foothold in 3 foreign races' villages. Then, with these 3 foreign races' villages as the starting point, they would continue to spread southward. A day later, the short Grey Thorn Tribe's village panicked. They looked at the 2 higher races' arrival with trepidation, even if they were 2 young men. I wonder what the 2 of you want us to do here? The village head of the Grey Thorn Tribe had a suspicious look on his face. This wasn't the territory of the Thunder Tribe or the Serpent Tribe. If he hadn't been to Stainless City before, he wouldn't have been able to recognize these 2 upper races. It's okay, don't panic. We are here to help you. Lu Sheng smiled. Do you know Amway? No, the Ajati matriarch? Miao Shu House. Chapter 1190. Oh, 3 villages have been invaded? Not bad. Renbaqian smiled after hearing the news from the radio station. This was good news, and his move had finally begun to work. Although the missionary work hadn't reached his expectations, this was only the beginning. Back then he, Lin Dong, and Xing Ruo had put in a lot of effort and couldn't find any mistakes in the teachings of the Ajati matriarch. As long as the other party's divine system was absorbed, it would be easy to eliminate the other party's rejection. Your God is an identity of the Ajati matriarch, and we also believe in her. Would you object? If you object, could it be that in your eyes, the God you believe in isn't the only one? Isn't it supreme? Since it's the only one, then my theory is fine. Isn't it very reasonable? Teachings? Are the teachings passed down by the gods or by you? If there is a contradiction, then your understanding is wrong. This kind of sophistry, coupled with the decision to integrate other divine systems from the beginning, was enough to break down the defense in the other party's heart. After all, this wasn't a confrontation, but absorption and integration. Most of the various religions guided people to do good, and all creatures yearned for the light. This was the nature of survival. As long as there was no conflict in the general direction, then small problems were easy to solve. Good news came from the south of the barrier, but after returning to Earth, Renbaqian heard bad news. You used a nuclear bomb to blow up the capital of Thunder Barbarian? Renbaqian raised his voice in surprise. This was a decision made after many discussions. Yang Sun looked serious. What was the result? Renbaqian asked. Thunder Barbarian King escaped, but he was also seriously injured. Yang Sen's expression didn't look good. What exactly happened? Renbaqian hated this kind of situation. In view of your warning and speculation about the strength of Thunder Barbarian King, a total of 3 nuclear bombs with a yield of 1. 3 megatons were dropped in 3 directions of the palace. Renbachien sneered. His warning was for them not to use force against Thunder Barbarian King. He didn't expect that in just a few months, even Thunder Barbarian King's capital would be blown up. Did they feel that they had stepped into the interstellar era and were inflated? The casualties of the Thunder Barbarian capital is 50%, and the rest of the population will find it difficult to survive for a year under the radiation. However, as you said, Thunder Barbarian King reacted before the nuclear bomb exploded and was injured but not killed. What happened next? Renbachien believed that something else must have happened. Otherwise, Yang Sen wouldn't have come looking for him. Yang Sen was silent for a moment before saying, "Now, the other two Thunder Barbarian kingdoms have also made their move. They have already sent people across the sea." Don't tell me that's why you're here. Thunder Barbarian King only had 3 people. Even if they found a forward operating base, they could just change to another one. They can't possibly plant flags all over the planet, Renbachien replied casually. He was wondering what else Yang Sen had not said. From the beginning until now, he had probably been talking nonsense. Thunder Barbaric King was seriously injured? It was probably just a light injury. At the very least, he would be able to jump around with his injuries. Although the forward operating base was valuable, it was not worth fighting with 3 Thunder Barbarian Kings. As long as he avoided these 3 Thunder Barbarian Kings and a few Thunder Barbarian experts, the others would not be too difficult to deal with. An expert like the Thunder Barbarian King had already undergone a qualitative change and was no longer an ordinary creature. I wonder if you have any way to help us capture a Thunder Barbarian King? If there is such a living specimen, I believe that we will have a huge harvest, and the nation will also give you a huge. Yang Sen finally revealed his true intentions. However, before he could finish his sentence, the screen went black. Renbachien expressionlessly turned off the communication device with a hint of anger in his eyes. Capture? How to capture? Even a nuclear bomb couldn't do anything. What were those people planning? To let the Empress fight to the death? There was no other possibility. After all, in their eyes, the Empress was a powerful being that no longer belonged to humans. They had overestimated the Empress. They had overestimated themselves. Not to mention whether they could defeat them. Even if they could, they would not go to such a distant galaxy to fight to the death for them. Renbachien sat on the sofa without saying a word. His eyes were gloomy. He hadn't been this angry in a long time. After a while, he contacted Ren Wanyan and said, "Wanyan, help me find out who is targeting your sister-in-law. In addition, send me the details of what happened in the 4-leaf clover planet." Something happened? Ren Wanyan's expression turned solemn. "Is someone crazy?" he asked. One had to know that the Empress's strength was well known among the higher-ups of various countries on Earth. Someone actually dared to target her. Was he crazy? "You investigate first." Renbachien waved his hand and didn't want to say more. Renbachien believed that someone would be willing to leak the news to him. After hanging up, Renbachien pondered again and felt that this matter wasn't as simple as someone targeting her. There might also be an intention to probe. Renbachien rubbed his forehead and gradually fell into deep thought. What else was behind the probing? Renbachien didn't like to deal with people who played politics because of this. It was tiring. Behind every intention, there might be another 10 or 8 circles. They wouldn't show their fangs if they didn't make you dizzy. Renbachien felt that in terms of brains, he would never be able to match them in this lifetime. Fortunately, his fists were bigger than theirs. Things went as he expected. 3 hours later, Ren Wanyan sent a request to contact him. "Citigroup. I convinced a few people to push for it. This might include some exchanges, and it would be difficult for that person to stop it directly," Ren Wanyan said, and then mentioned a few more names. "Who gave you the information?" Renbachien suddenly asked. "That man's secretary." Renbachien rubbed his forehead. He couldn't be bothered to guess whether that person wasn't in a good position to stop him or if he was just taking advantage of the situation. No matter what they thought, as long as his fist was big enough, and as long as humans had not completely left Earth, it would not affect him much. As for those few people, it's not easy to move either. Not only them, but even the white flag was not easy to deal with. After all, this was a private matter that could not be brought to the table. Moreover, all the countries were working together to play landlord. How could he drag someone off the table and beat him up? After thinking about it, he came up with an idea. Remove the flag from the dojo. Since you're making trouble for me, I'll make trouble for you. If they threw a bunch of earthwheel experts into the United States, they would have a headache and would have to bring 2 more bodyguards with them every day. In particular, after the uproar caused by the Empress, the United States was full of vigilance against strong practitioners. On the other hand, there was another kind of fanaticism among the people. Talented youths were recruited into the dojo. After entering the dojo, they would need to earn contribution points to learn higher-level martial arts. Over time, these people would become the blades of the dojo. Talented youths were recruited into the dojo. After entering the dojo, they would need to earn contribution points to learn higher-level martial arts. Over time, these people would become the blades of the dojo. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.